My book, firstly, is Raised by Wolves, Inside the Life and Mind of a Guerrilla Hustler is the subtitle. This is the intro. As a child in the constant presence of gangsters, I overheard a lot. I remember hearing it said that it's better to be feared than to be loved. I remember gangsters who tried to live on love, and I remember that it almost always ended badly for them. But then, many of the feared didn't fare too well either. I remember an afternoon in a Harlem classroom long ago, after collecting a writing assignment from me, my first grade teacher, whose name I no longer recall, said, "You write well, Cavario. You could be a writer." I remember sneering and remarking, "A writer? I'm going to be a gangster." I remember thinking that I had chosen the game, but I survived long enough to understand that the game had chosen me long before I even knew what choice was. Long before I understood that the choices we make sometimes lead to circumstances that leave no choices at all. Long before I knew the world was filled with infinite possibilities. Bullshit yourself and the world will play along. We're taught this long before we can identify our true selves. But even before that mental is uploaded into our psyches, we, as children, operate on simplistic interpretation. This is what makes us more likely to do what the adults in our lives do rather than what they say. My people never wanted me to be in the street, but everything in my home and everything in my community dictated otherwise. And as psychologists will often argue whether nature or nurture is the cause of our behaviors, I've come to suspect that it's a bit of both. If that's so, then the likelihood of my becoming who and what I became was as sure as the earth on its axis. Although I ended up bringing something uniquely my own into existence, I was nurtured in a setting replete with criminal inclination. I often, too, felt the influences of my parents' innate makeup heavily affecting my actions. This exposure hardened me and prepped me for what would become my future. Consciously, I knew nothing of the interaction between my genes and my world, but I held all of my elders in the highest regard. Theirs was a criminal dynasty, cold, mean, and unflinching, and they bared no weaknesses, or at least none that were visible to my young eyes. Growing up in the 70s gave me the opportunity to witness the end of an era. It is a time that will never be repeated, a time through which I was afforded the knowledge of the unwritten handbook. The pictures on the pages of our invisible manual bore images of fierce flights and frivolous fancies, and I looked forward to growing up and taking my place in this gritty landscape. Like most children, I thought my home was indicative of all homes. I thought that everyone witnessed hundreds of thousands of dollars being counted by their parents on an almost daily basis. I thought everyone found 100-round spitting .45 caliber Thompson submachine guns in their mother's bedroom closet. Thus, by the age of 9, I truly believed that I was genetically engineered for the life of a gangster. And at this point, I have forgotten more about the game of death than most have had the time or opportunity to learn before their time is up and their opportunities are no more. Who am I? I am the son of my Harlem-born, gangster-to-her-heart mother and the genetic product of my Harlem-born, killer-without-a-heart father. I am the result of confusion and anger and the byproduct of deceit and greed. I am 100% guerrilla hustler.
Yes, sir. Hey, shalom, Most High Christ bless. This Captain Hoshayah. Hey, look, y'all. Today I'm here with Cavario H, the mind plug. He don't need no real introduction. Why? Because the streets know him. You know what I'm saying? The streets know him. Today we're going to hear his story. And Lord's willing, man, we can edify you, man. Look, we want to bring out the truth of who we are. We want to talk about identity. And we want to give y'all some great knowledge into the streets and how to turn from it today.
Peace, brother. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you for having me, man. It's an honor to be with the brothers. I was not familiar with your organization, specifically the Israel United in Christ organization.
Yes, sir.
I'm familiar because I'm from New York and I was raised in the 70s in New York, so I'm familiar with the Hebrew Israelites. I think that most people from where I'm from are familiar with the Hebrew Israelites. I think I heard you mention someone they're not the same.
Yes.
Yeah, so
not all
I look
groups.
forward. Yeah, I look forward to learning more about that.
Yeah.
As we engage. But yeah, thanks for having me, man. You know, I am a former street person. And anybody who's familiar with my story knows I retired from the game. I started hustling in 1980. I retired from the game in 1997, started at 13, retired at 30. And I began writing, and it began with my writing of my own life for my own purposes. I had no intention of writing a book. It was about introspection. It was about figuring out where I'd been in order for me to determine where I would go next. Because when I stopped, it was very abrupt, very sudden. I didn't have any plan or intention of stopping. I was, for all intents and purposes, as it relates to that experience, I was winning.
Yeah.
I had no problems, I had no issues. You know, I had a nice, low-key, profitable operation that I had cultivated, you know, after, 15 years. My last 2 years were excellent, you know. And my previous 15 years had been progressive, you know. I had a very uncommon experience with that lifestyle, you know. No jail, no drug addiction, no bad name, none of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't have any of the normal reasons that a person would have for stopping. I didn't have any of those except that I was tired.
Yeah.
You know, I was 30 years old and I felt like I was 80, you know, in terms of just my mind and what I had on it, you know. And I began reading a lot about just personal development and dysfunction and codependence and behavioral sciences. And I began to learn a lot about the basis of my choices.
Yes, sir.
And how so much of what I had done in my life had little to do with who I actually was and more to do with the circumstances around my growth and my influences, you know.
Yeah.
So that opened my mind to the idea that I could do something else. And then one day I decided that I would give myself a chance to do that.
Hey, with what you just said, it made me think about a scripture. I'm going to read it real quick. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33, about, just dealing with our surroundings. That's one of the ways that, like, we speak to people all the time, and we be sitting up there. Some people, especially when you speak about gang life, drug addiction, or hustling or anything, a lot of them say, well, weak-minded people do that, or this, that, and that. They don't understand is you do around your environment what you see, you know what I'm saying? That's what's being taught, what's being communicated to us. And that's actually biblical. When you read 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33, it say, be not deceived, evil communications corrupt good manners. So by us growing up in certain neighborhoods, like I know I'm from Lamont God Projects, and then, you young, you growing up, you see people selling drugs, you know what I'm saying? You see the gang affiliation, so you see a lot of evil around you. You see folks smoking weed, and what ends up happening, you get absorbed into that. A lot of time it ain't us choosing that, you know what I'm saying? It's what you've been, it chose you. It say, be not deceived, evil communication corrupt good manners. And then Paul goes on to tell us, awake to righteousness and sin not. A lot of our people, they don't know what righteousness is. When we read in the Bible, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 25, it say, for this is the righteousness of God, that we keep his commandments. So, you'll hear a lot of sayings in the community where people say, yeah, I'm trying to be righteous, or act like they're doing righteous deeds, but they not. It say, awake to righteousness and sin not, for some have not the knowledge of God. I speak to this to your shame. And the reason why we say it's a shame, and why the Bible says it's a shame, notice in every neighborhood, what you see? Churches.
Yeah.
It's churches everywhere.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
yeah.
Indeed.
It's a shame. So now, you on point with that right there, A lot of the stuff, the way our people turn out the way they are is because of, their surroundings and stuff like that.
That's right.
So could you talk about your upbringing in Harlem, for a minute?
Absolutely. Well, for me, the environmental influence that you speak about, that environmental influence was my home.
Yeah.
Right. So I was raised in a home of organized crime. So my mother was a gangster and a boss. My father was a gangster and a boss and a hardcore. They were both very hardcore, violent people. Right. My mother was more of a structured kind of violent person. My father was more of a loosely violent person, so my mother was more of the part that gave me the boss mindset,
Yeah.
How to run a crew and how to set up operations and handle the infrastructure component. My father was more of the father and father figures, were more of the violent. She liked violent men, so they gave me more of the enforcement components.
Yeah.
So, by the time I got in the street, and there was a generation between them and myself, so there were two generations of influence in my home. So, being outside, I saw things that other kids in my neighborhood saw. My family ran my neighborhood, right, in Harlem. So I saw what the other kids in my neighborhood saw. I saw it through a different lens because when I wasn't outside, I was inside, and I was immersed in the infrastructure and how everything was set up. So when I saw what I saw what was actually happening through a real lens.
Yeah.
As opposed to the lens that one of my childhood peers might have growing up at home, where his father was a cab driver and his mother worked at the local school as a teacher's assistant or something like that, and he went to church every Sunday and stuff like that, or had to be in the house before the lights came on the street. I had a different perspective of the reality that we were immersed in communally.
Yeah.
So that had a lot to do with the normalizing of the behavior for me, because it was from my home. I have a concept that I introduced a couple of years ago, where I explain that there are three different types of people in the so-called hood. You have ones that are like the example I gave, where there's a home structure,
working family,
right? And there's the mother is a working regular person, father's a working regular person. They're both present, and the child grows up in that structure because that is your foundation, not what's outside. Long before you know what's outside, you're exposed during the periods where your identity is being established. You're exposed to that reality. So that's the foundation of who you are, right? Your first, 5, 6, 7 years, they establish your initial neural network. That neural network is the way that your brain will work. Everything else that comes after that will be built on top of that.
Yeah.
So if you think of it like a physical structure, like a building, right? You have your bottom floor and then all the subsequent floors that are built on top of that, right? You don't start the building in the 5th floor. It can't have that. You have to have everything else. So when you come from a home, whatever the nature of your home is, that is the basis of who you are. Now you can start out with a mud and hay, foundation, whatever, and try to, get to a point where you recognize the more solid structure of brick and mortar. But if you try to place that brick and mortar on top of that mud and hay foundation, it'll come down on top of it.
Hey, what you said is biblical. You can't build a house on sand.
Right.
Because when the wind comes, it's gonna knock it down.
That's right.
Yeah. So, hey, that it's a scripture. I think it's Proverbs 24:16. Y'all know, train up a child. 22. I'm gonna get that real quick. Proverbs 22 and what? 6. Okay. It say, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So, it's amazing just to sit up there, and that's one of the reasons why we want to have this conversation, because you can see, you done grown in wisdom, especially turning from the background that you come from. A lot of people don't, realize, like, if the Most High God, man, He gonna bring inspiration into our lives, and a lot of the seeds He started to plant with us, and things we start to learn over the years. A lot of it is, foundational from God's teaching. The scriptures, tell us that the Bible is the book of life. one of the things that we done learn, you know, through the scriptures, especially me learned through the scriptures, I noticed the book of life because everything you sit up there and you read about is actually taking place today. So even what you said, train up a child in the way he should go, you know what I'm saying, when he get old, he won't depart from it. A lot of times when, you know, when you look at our people, like we were saying earlier, it's the surrounding or the training that they got that causes them to do the things that they do. You made a statement earlier, and I want to speak about like Deuteronomy chapter 28, 15 through 16. Have you ever heard the teachings of Deuteronomy 28?
No, I'm not familiar with
that. All right, look, I want to get a scripture real quick. And just dealing with our identity, you know what I'm saying? We are people that's been taken captive. You know what I'm saying? We are people that's captive in this land right here. We still being held captive in this land right here, right now. This Deuteronomy chapter 28, and I'm going to read verse 1. So you said you familiar who the Israelites are. You done seen the teachings, all of that stuff right there. Now, I do got a question to ask you. Have you ever just stopped to listen to the Israelites? Because I know you was getting that money, chasing that paper out there.
Yeah,
so
but I've always been a student.
Yeah.
Right? So I've always opened an ear to any information that I came into contact with. I learned a lot from a lot of different people.
Okay.
And that is the culmination of my education.
Yeah.
I didn't go to school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's how I learned. I learned from people. So yeah, I've listened to the Hebrew Israelites talking on, you know, back in the days they used to be on in Times Square on 42nd Street.
Yeah.
You know, back in the days.
Hey, you see,
I used to see them out there.
I used to
enjoy them saying, hey, brother, hey, see that white devil next to you? You mean my wife? Yeah, cut her head off. cut her head off.
Oh, man.
I used to be like, yo, they be wildin', son.
Well, they wild. Yeah, they do be wild.
But I listened to the different things that they said. That's why, you know, I don't know. I never had, like, my grandmother went to church.
Yeah.
Right? My mother's mother went to church, but other than that, there was no church going on around my home, whatever, right? And there were no pictures of Caesar Borgia on our walls and nothing like that. But my grandmother had this little cross that she used to have hanging, and it was, the figure on it was a brass figure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, you know, there was no overt, like, you know, idea in my home of there being this Caucasian character who, and I know who Caesar Borgia is.
Yeah.
I know all about Caesar Borgia. Yeah. You know, I when they said back then that, you know, I think I might be the first place I ever heard that, you know, talking about the geographical origins of this character and how he was described.
Yeah.
You know, and when I heard it, I'm a logical person. When I heard it, I said, yeah, that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
And that has been an idea in my head ever since I can remember.
Nah.
Like, it's never been a doubt in my mind that if this person existed, this person was definitely a melanated man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
check this out. You said you know who Caesar Borgia is. Mm-hmm. Now, I want you to edify the audience on it, because, you know, a lot of our people, they still think that image of Jesus, they think that image of Caesar Borgia portraying to be Jesus Christ, they think that's him. You know, they just celebrated Easter, what's this, yesterday? And they were taking pictures with that man who is Caesar Borgia. So you tell the audience who's...
Well, see, this is the funny, he was the son of a deviant criminal named Pope Alexander VI. Well, that's what he called himself. I forget his real name. But he was a Borgia.
It was Pope, yeah, Rico Borgia, I think.
Yeah, Rico Borgia. Yeah. That was Caesar Borgia. So the guy that people think that, and let's not say think, because think implies cognition.
Yeah.
Processing. They don't think.
Mm-hmm.
They believe. They believe because they were told.
Right.
They were told by the structure of white supremacy that has designed their whole matrix of understanding. Yeah. You know, so much. I'm a great proponent of critical thinking. You know, my slogan is, as the Mind Plug, my slogan is, you know, think critically so that you may live wonderfully. right?
Yes, sir.
And that is the reason that I had a different outcome than the majority of my peers.
Yeah.
Because I did everything that everybody else did.
Yeah.
I just thought more critically about the things I did before I did them, right? I didn't just have an idea and say, yeah, that's a good idea because I thought it. Let me go do that.
Yeah.
And then after the fact, be like, damn, I should have did that like that. I should have did it another way. And now it's created more trouble than it solved, problems than it solved, or problems were solved. There were more problems created than were solved by this act, right? Based upon this thought that I had that I didn't put through a process,
right? Which
is what it is. To think critically is to think about what you're thinking about.
Yes, sir.
Right. So, in the process of a lot of our people, there is no thinking about what they think about,
right? Because
there's no. I mean, I grew up, a melanated male in this society. I know what it is, and this was before the advent of mass media, or as we know it today, mass digital media. Right?
Yeah.
Because there was radio, and before that there was a printing press or whatever, and those were forms of initial mass media, designed for the purpose of propagating ideas.
Yes, sir.
Not encouraging thought. So a lot of our people don't do a lot of intentional thinking. They do a lot of believing, though.
Right.
Right? So they'll associate themselves with an idea, and then they'll associate themselves with the group of people who hold that idea.
Yeah.
That then validates the idea. But very few will actually put that idea through a critical process to determine its validity or not.
Hey, that's on point what you just said, because like right now, especially with this social media era, like anybody can come up with a voice now. And if they find enough people that'll listen to them, they'll follow that. It's dangerous.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a real problem,
Right.
Because not for nothing, man, there are a great many people, and it's always been this way. There are a great many people who have neurobiological problems.
Yeah.
Their brains, for whatever reason, just like people born with their heart outside their chest,
Yeah.
or born with limbs that are not completed. Sometime, for whatever reason, the biological process of development at the point of, from the point of inception through gestation, something goes wrong. And there's not a complete process.
Yeah.
That happens more frequently with the brain than it does with the body, right? So you have people who have actual mental problems based upon their brains not being completely formed, or totally formed, or correctly formed, some part of their brain.
Yeah.
Then you have people who go through traumas,
right,
or who are born with chemical imbalances. The brain is completely there,
yeah,
but there's chemistry that's not operating properly.
Yeah.
That creates disparity in their processes, right? Then you have people who go through traumas. Traumas are very common, and those traumas bring about all sorts of psycho-emotional disparity, and issues.
And you on
right?
point with that too?
So
yeah.
Now when people were not able to access other people outside of their immediate space, then it was very difficult for them to find other people who were suffering from other, similar conditions to their own, for them to be able to create groups.
Right.
Right? Social media enabled people who shouldn't have the ability to access large groups of people.
Right.
It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
There are people that shouldn't have access to large groups of people because
the trauma.
People are too susceptible to influence.
Right.
Right? And people are driven largely by the need for validation, the need for acceptance, the need for inclusion.
Yeah.
Right? Low self-esteem abounds. So when a person is susceptible to, influence based upon the fact that they need to be needed or need to be included, they're subject to be drawn into anything.
Yeah.
Anything. I mean, this is where you get, not to go in a political direction, but the plain and simple fact of the matter is where you get MAGA-ness from.
Yeah.
As an example of psychological and emotional, and even spiritual destruction.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a real issue. Social media, unbridled social media, gives people that shouldn't have
A platform,
access.
right.
It gives them a platform, and this is why what you guys do, what I do, this is why it's necessary.
Yeah.
You know, it's not considered cool. You can't be a real stand-up, respectable, you know, in the urban inner city setting at a certain socioeconomic level. You can't be a real dude and espouse intellect or spirituality.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense at all. That's counterintuitive. You should absolutely be able to be considered a real dude and a stand-up man, a solid man, and somebody who's formidable and respectable when you have intellectual prowess and spiritual awareness.
Yeah.
Those are the foundations of any solid human being.
Yeah.
Why are they not accepted, respected, or revered in our communities?
Right.
There's something wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that there's so many platforms or entities or organizations or groups or, you know, all sorts of forums that promote this counterintuitive,
Right.
self-destructive mindset as progressive, cool, acceptable.
Right.
Like, there's something very, very, very wrong, and it's impacting all of society.
Yeah.
But it's having the most adverse effect on our group.
Yeah.
Because we have the least amount of collectivism.
Yeah, right.
Structure.
I just did a class about that. Collectivism versus individualism.
Right.
I just did a class about that. And that's one of the problems with our people too. We don't know how to come together as a group and practice group economics. But then what our people don't understand, the curses do got a lot to do with that. When you read Deuteronomy 28, 15 through 68, verse 1, I'm going to read verse 1 real quick. It say, and it shall come to pass, and thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. So when you think about Moses and like what you said, going right back when we were speaking about Caesar Boonjara and stuff like that. Caesar Boonjara, we all know that so-called white man who are the Edomites today, they don't come from Africa. Everybody knows that. But Israel is over there in Northeast Africa. And the people that's over there now, we know they came back over there in 1948. So we know that, okay, who was there before then? So Jesus Christ is a black man. And it was important for you to sit up there also, somebody got the past in the background you come from to let them know, look, hey, these Jesus pieces y'all putting on your neck, that's Caesar Boonjara. Yeah. Jesus Christ is a black man. Now, I want to read something real quick. I want to read another scripture. I want to read Revelation chapter 1 real quick, verse 14, because you spoke about his description. This Revelations 1 and 14, it say, his head and his hairs was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes was as a flame of fire. Now, you got a lot of people now, they call apologetics. That's why I wrote this book right here. It's called Apologetics, So we got groups called apologetics. They try to come against our teachings. These teachings really help, get black men and women off drugs. Stop fornicating, because we wasn't taught that. I was just speaking to a brother on the way up here. When I was young, my uncles told me, never get married. Then turn around, they get married. So now they became a whoremonger, did all types of evil out here to women, things that shouldn't have never been done. And then when you get older, you got to deal with the consequences and repercussions for the way you lived back then. Going back to how you said, we can end up thinking we doing something good. We could cause more destruction than anything,
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to finish reading this. It says, head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes was as a flame of fire. So that's talking about the texture of his hair, because when you read Daniel 7 and 9, it says his hair was like the pure wool. Then it goes on to say, and his feet like fine brass, as they burned in a furnace, and his voice as a sound of many waters. We all know brass is a derivative of brown. Brass is a brown color. And matter of fact, it's a Hebrew word. I forgot what it was. When you look up the Hebrew word and then you look up that exact word to show you how it look, it's gonna be me and your complexion right there. So hey y'all, Jesus Christ is a black man. That white image, that's Cedral Bunjer, Rico Bunjer's son. Pope Alexander VI had him pose as Jesus the Christ in the 1400s, and Leonardo da Vinci sat up there and painted that image as Rico Bunjer's son as Jesus Christ. And now y'all was on Easter Sunday thinking the bunny lay eggs.
See, man, listen. Like I didn't even know that Easter thing was yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. That's how far removed I am from that. I didn't even have no idea until you just said that. For his sister, actually, is the one that they had posing as Mary. By the way, too. So you mentioned about they walking around, guys walking around with this image on their necklace.
The same image of white supremacy.
This is the funny thing, like, they walk around with that, they walk around with the crosses, all that kind of stuff, whatever. They don't, my generation is the one that gave that to the kids. Like the rappers, they emulate us. Right? Rappers have always emulated street people. Rappers got everything, their attitude, their style of dress, the baby, all of it they assimilated from street people, right? From people who were in the street, not people who were in the neighborhood, specifically people who were in the street, right? Because we represented opulence or wealth or power or control in a place where people didn't have any of that, right? Before the age of crack, the average person in the hood had no access to the drug game whatsoever. I'm talking about 99.9% of the people in the hood had no access to the drug game. The closest they could come is if they could get themselves some money, they could buy some drugs to use, but to get some to sell, they could not get that.
I seen about something that you said about that. You were saying that like when it came to selling heroin, it was only families that controlled that.
Yes.
And then when crack came on the scene, you said anybody that had any type of little bit of money,
they could go get
some crack,
some cocaine.
and then they go cheap cocaine, rock it up.
That happened around 80. It really exploded around 85, 84, 85. It really exploded.
So I want you to explain this for me, because you said crack didn't just destroy neighborhoods; it rewired how we thought about each other. Trust disappeared. Love turned transactional.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Remember I was saying about how I was developed in a home where I was given the mores and ethics and principles of the drug world. It's different than what a person that's not in the drug world would get as morals, ethics, and principles. So just because we're all from the same environment, geographically, it doesn't mean we're the same people.
Right.
The guy who lived on my floor in my building was not like me because his home, his foundation was not like mine. Right. But if he didn't have an opportunity to do a comparison, then he would assume that once he goes inside his home, he's having the same experience I'm having inside my home. He's not. You know, I got a sister and cousins, and they're in one room nodding, and I got mother and the parents, whatever, they're in this room counting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. You know what I mean? I'm being told, you know, this is your business, not show business. You know, that you know you have to carry this thing and protect this thing. And
if they don't get it from you, they're gonna get it from somebody else.
No, we didn't get. I didn't get that one. That's a crack era idea. We didn't. That wasn't even a question. That didn't even come up. If they don't get it from you, that's excusing. They didn't bother to make excuses. This is what we do. There's no excuse. It's what we do. It's what we do. You gotta understand, these are Jim Crow era people. So they had no illusions about where their place was in the white man's society at all. So it was either you were going to live like a sharecropper, or you were going to take the chances to get whatever it was that you could get in order to have a quality of life that you wanted to have. At all potential costs. Right? And there was no excuse about it. We doing it. This is what we do.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, when I was being given those understandings, my peers were not being given those understandings.
Yeah.
So when the floodgates to the streets opened up with the advent of cheap cocaine, you had a bunch of people who came from a completely different moral and ethical background, principle background, right? Who interjected themselves into this alien space that they thought they knew by proximity. They thought, well, people have been selling drugs around my neighborhood all my life. I guess, you know, I know what I'm doing. I guess I'm from this.
Yeah.
I'm from this. It's a delusion.
Yeah.
You're not from it. You're not from it. You're not from it. You're from whatever was happening in your home. That's what you're from.
Yeah.
Right? So you get out here and you bring those things with you into this world, and you increase the prison population, or you increase the cemetery, you know, plots.
Yeah.
That's what you do, because what you have in your mind as a foundational understanding about how this world works does not fit into the underworld.
Right.
It does not suit you for the underworld.
Yeah.
Right? So their tacit understanding of what they were witnessing from their stoops or their windows and that lifestyle is what led to that, what you just quoted me saying. You know, they didn't have the depth of understanding. Okay. So their superficial perspective turned it into a thing where, you know, things like, if we don't do it, if I don't sell it to them, somebody else gonna sell it to them, like whatever. We didn't have to do that.
I know.
We didn't have to. We didn't have to.
I sold crack before.
You know what I mean?
I did it for like 3 or 4 months, and I felt bad about it. Cause see, I started off with cocaine. I was in a trap house, and one of my partners, I ain't gonna say his name or nothing, but
we wouldn't know it anyway.
Yeah, but he sat up there. He the one who really showed me the game, and I remember working the trap house at night. You know, we didn't let nobody in. We were selling cocaine, and you know, we working the wonder. I remember in my partner, he was like, whatever they ask for, you come with $2, you sell them the $2. This going back to the lack of morals. So one dude, he came with $2 one night. I served him outside the window. He said, I'm gonna take this hit. I'm gonna be right back. He took the hit, came right back. He was bloody. He came back with real blood money. And he was like, hey, I want $20 worth now. So I'm like, it is a lack of morality up in that. I want to read a scripture too. I want to read Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. And then I'm gonna dive into that with that real quick. Hold on real quick. Deuteronomy 28, verse 15. Because we were just speaking about in verse 1, the Lord told the Israelites that they keep the commandments, the blessings will come upon them, and we'll be above all people. In verse 15, it say, if we break the commandments, curses upon us, come upon us, and he gonna make us Lord than all people. It say, but if it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. It say, curse shall thou be in the city, and curse shall thou be in the field. Now I want to expound on it a little bit more real quick. We'll say this right here. So this is a book right here that I put together. Been doing real good concerning sales and stuff like that. And it's basically like where we initially trying to put the book at. I don't want to say it online because we got a lot of people just trying to stop what we doing. Because right now, like, we got the biggest movement on the planet Earth when it come to fighting for the lives of our people. Like, we literally worldwide. So it say, this curse is one of the most evident as it describes the condition of a disobedient people suffering oppression while examining history. It becomes clear that this prophecy aligns with the struggles of African descendants across the world. The systemic oppression, economic hardship, and societal injustices they have endured are reflections of these biblical curses. The city is where many of these curses manifest most visibly. African American communities, for example, have suffered from economic disparities, crime, housing discrimination, over-policing, and poor educational opportunity. These challenges are not coincidentals, but align with the prophecy that the people will be cursed in the cities they dwell. It's a Leviticus 26:31 and reinforces this. I will make your cities waste and bring your sanctuaries into desolation, and I will not smell the savor of your sweet odors. Urban areas where the descendants of the enslaved reside often suffer from neglect and economic ruin. Many once thriving black communities have become impoverished due to systemic racism, redlining, and the denial of economic opportunities. The curse is evident in cities across the United States, the Caribbean, and throughout the diaspora. Then it say the field is also a representation of oppression. This refers not only to the historical context of plantation slavery, but also a modern labor exploitation. During slavery, the field was a place of forced labor, oppression, and backbreaking toil. Today it symbolized the ongoing economic disenfranchisement of black laborers who continue to work for the systems that do not benefit them. So I'm going to jump down to crime. Number 3, it say many inner cities suffer from high crime rates, both from within the community and from oppressive policing. The prison industrial complex disproportionately targets black men, turning them into the modern day slaves under the 13th Amendment. Chicago, St. Louis, and Memphis have seen extreme violence along with racist policies that criminalize black existence. So what we try to do, we try to sit up there, when we go through the scriptures, we try to show out people like, look, this us right here. The Bible says we're going to be cursed in the city, who populate the poorest communities, anywhere you go, not just in the U.S. I done been around the world, and I done seen our oppression worldwide, and it's amazing. And before my eyes was open to the truth, you would think that this the way things supposed to be. But then when your eyes open, you really get to seeing that, look, we are people held captive by another nation of people, you know. The same with the drugs coming in our community. So I want to ask you about that. With the drugs coming into the community, how do you think they come in? Do we bring them in, or do you think the other nations bringing them in and flooding the communities?
I mean, it's always been said that we don't own boats.
Right.
We don't own planes. We don't own the manufacturing of these drugs in their points of origin,
right.
Whether it's Southeast Asia or Turkey or somewhere in the mountains in South America somewhere. We don't control those means.
Right.
So that's not even a question.
Yeah.
Our main problem is a lack of education,
right.
A lack of emphasis on education, prioritization of education. That is our main problem. So everything you addressed in your book, everything is predicated on the fact that we do not know. The weapons waged against us are only effective because we are not informed enough and educated enough and cognizant enough to defend ourselves against them. That's what makes us susceptible to everything they do, because there's no importance placed on learning. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, you know, the ignorance is ridiculous.
So we're learning, because I know you spoke about collectivism. I'm from Memphis, so like I can write good, but the speech, it ain't always there. But when we spoke about that earlier, collectivism, right? How do you suggest the people get there? How do we become collective?
I mean, it has to start with education, bro.
Right.
And when I say education, anybody who follows me knows that I constantly speak about education. And I'm not talking about institutionalized education. I'm not a product of institutional education.
Right.
Right? I'm autodidactic.
Yeah.
So I taught myself, because as long as you're able to read and you're able to comprehend, you're able to learn.
Yeah.
The things that you will be best served by are certainly not the things that these white institutions want you to learn. So even if you are in school, you should always be doing your own reading. You should always be pursuing your own information.
I put something together. I'm trying to find it. Because you made a point with education. One of the places that I think that all of us should start at is identity first and foremost. We don't know who we are. We don't know who to identify as. We all individuals. You know, one of the things that you'll hear a lot of Israelites say when they teach is, and you're right about everybody don't need a platform. A lot of them groups with that stuff that they teach out there, even that stuff with New York, I do want to clear this up for the people that's gonna be watching and the people that's watching now. Nobody, even if you is, now God is against interracial marriage. That's Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 3. But if somebody walking down the street, and you, just because they walking with a white man or a white woman, it don't mean you go and disrespect them. The Bible teaches us in, that's Romans 14, right? Verse 12. Let me get that read. Yeah, Romans 12 and 18. I want to read this real quick. Because a lot of people, because they do got a platform, they make the people who really out here spreading this gospel and really trying to wake our people up look bad. And we know some of these groups, they government agents. It is what it is. You know, this Romans chapter 12, verse 18, it say, if it be possible, as much as lied in you, live peacefully with all men. How we gonna live peacefully with all men as soon as you see somebody, you attacking them?
Yep. Even as a kid, that didn't make sense.
Yeah,
to me.
It don't.
And the reason that did not make sense to me was because of the kinds of morals and ethics that I was raised with in my religion, gangsterism.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And for you to be a successful person in the streets, whatever types of detriment a person thinks is inherent to the urban setting, it's multiplied exponentially when you are involved in criminality.
Right.
So as dangerous as the hood can be, it's 10 times more dangerous when you're involved in getting money in the street.
Right.
So if you do not know how to conduct yourself, if you do not know how to cultivate working relationships, even with the people whom you might be in opposition with, in terms of you got one product and they got another product. If you do not know how to manage those situations,
right,
at some point someone who cares less about themselves than you do about yourself is going to facilitate your early demise.
Right.
Right. I did my thing all up and down the East Coast in cities I am not from and neighborhoods I have never been connected to.
Right.
And I did not have problems. I made money and I was dominant.
Yeah.
And it was because I was given that insight about it's good to be tough, but it's much better to be smart.
You didn't know how to deal with people too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So even as a kid, when I would see the Hebrew Israelite brothers, just they'd be talking and then all of a sudden they'd be set off by some guy walking by, or some interracial couple walking by, whatever, or even white people who stopped and were curious or whatever, and just attacking them, whatever. And just knowing what I know, coming from what I come from, understanding the extremes that can easily come about, I was like, yeah, that's not too smart.
Right.
That's not too smart because you have no idea
who that
you
is
are, who
right.
you're dealing with. You have no idea. As a young person, if somebody did something like that to me, they were going to deal with some severe consequences, consequences that they probably didn't anticipate.
Yeah.
They probably didn't think that they had done enough or gone far enough or, committed enough of an offense. And that in a lot of instances, people thought my responses to perceived offenses were disproportionate, but they didn't understand who they were dealing with. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not the same. Like, I'm not going to do or react the way you react just because that's the way you react. A lot of people make that mistake, even today.
Yeah.
A lot of people make the mistake of thinking that everybody's going to act the way they act.
Right.
The thing about a person who came up the way I came up is, I believe that it is potential for everybody to act or behave or respond the way I would respond.
Right.
And I don't want that.
Man, you think just alike.
So I treat people with the respect that they should treat me with, because I don't want a problem with me.
Yeah.
You dig? So I used to look at that and be like, man, I don't think that makes a lot of sense, man. I don't think that what you know makes a lot of sense. And I don't think that it lends validity to the other things that you're saying.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think that when you just attack someone out of nowhere and go on this vituperative tirade and just talk all crazy,
Right.
I think that it just makes everything else you've seen invalid. This makes people be like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, you got to treat people the way you want to be treated.
That's facts.
And
I used to believe that a lot of those
yeah.
guys were malcontents,
Yeah.
guys who couldn't get along,
Yeah.
guys who had come home from prison and
Yeah.
who weren't socialized properly. I used to think that my presumption was that was a large part of the collective. Like,
Yeah.
these are guys who just got out of prison.
Yeah.
Or these are guys who grew up in foster care and ended up in prison or whatever. And when they came home, this was something that they were either drawn into while they were in prison,
Yeah.
or they were drawn to when they got out because they were discontented.
Yeah.
And this.
Well, this
fed
teaching
their
ain't in
anger.
prison. It ain't in prison like that.
No,
We
I'm talking
trying
about
to
the
get-
Hebrew Israelites.
That's what I'm
I'm talking about that particular
yeah.
that
You talking
faction.
He talking about you BHIs, ISUCK,
Yeah.
GM what a man. He talking about y'all.
Yeah.
For real though. Cussing women out on the street. That's what he talking about. He talking about the BHIs.
That's right. That's what I saw.
You black Hebrew
That's what I saw.
Israelites.
So just imagine now. That's the only exposure I've had.
Yeah.
Right, as it relates to groups of melanated people involved in the Israelite movement.
Yeah.
But I was not apprehensive at all about responding to that initial communication I received from your associates.
Yeah.
At all, because I welcome the opportunity to have a dialogue with anybody. This is
Yeah.
how I've learned.
Right.
So I'm welcome to sit down with anybody and talk about, where it is they come from, why they come from that, in terms of their mindset, their ideology, what draws you to that, and so forth.
Yeah.
What I was going to say earlier about the cats wearing the Jesus pieces and all that, whatever. A lot of those guys grew up, like, it did come from my generation, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of exploded because rappers started doing it. Rappers like Biggie, they popularized it amongst people outside of the the underworld. But a lot of guys, they were drawn to that initially from my generation, because a lot of the guys in my generation, they came up in homes where they went to church.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. So a lot of that stuff was the basis of their sense of identity and understanding, and any information they might have had, whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of that was part of it, right? Now, when the next generation came along, they didn't have so much of a connection to that, to the religiosity of it.
Yeah.
They didn't have so much of a connection to that, because they hadn't seen anything that came out of it that really benefited our people. Right, so they weren't going to church and all of that stuff. They weren't, the kids who were born in the latter part of the '80s, the latter part of the '80s. They weren't going to church and stuff like that.
Did you grow up in church?
No, that's what I'm saying. There was no church.
I never grew up in church.
No, there was no church.
Yeah.
My grandmother, she was the one that went to church, but she was the only one in my home that went to church.
Yeah.
Nobody else went to church, right? So the guys who came in the '80s, like, who started to come outside in the '80s a little bit, those guys started to attach themselves to that imagery because of its connection to street guys, not religion.
Right.
It was about, like, if I got a couple of crack dollars and I want to buy some jewelry,
what gonna make me look the part? I'm gonna get
what's
the
gonna
Jesus
make me look,
yeah.
and that's all it came down to.
Yeah.
And then rap just expanded that.
Right.
But there's no religious component to any of that. It's not about they some of them don't even know who that is. Right. I used to walk around, I had a St. Lazarus piece.
Yeah.
And the only thing I knew about St. Lazarus was that he was the patron saint of criminals.
Yeah.
That's what I knew, But I liked the piece.
Yeah.
I had no the religious connotation to it had no.
A lot of them don't know it's idolatry.
Meaning. Yeah, exactly. It had no meaning to me whatsoever, right? But it influenced other people. You know, they saw guys like me wearing that piece. When I was wearing that piece, most black people we saw, why you got a guy with a man with two dogs walking on your chest? I had no idea, because all they knew was a Jesus piece.
Yeah.
right? Or cross.
Yeah.
Right? But there's no religious connotation in terms of their attraction to it. There's
Right.
nothing religious about it at all. It's
Yeah.
just, this is something associated with an idea
Yeah.
or an image that I'm attracted to
Yeah.
as it relates to, you know, the opulence of the street life. That's all.
Yeah.
Nothing at all. No religious, nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand it. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, we be trying to let our people know, like, what's the word when you indirectly do some, subconsciously?
Subconsciously.
It's like what they subconsciously promote. So like a lot of them, like they might not know, you know, they just doing it because, hey, look, hey, this the style, this the fashion. Hey, that's fire. I can afford it.
Right.
I got it.
Right.
It's a status symbol.
Right.
But subconsciously, they don't be knowing that they still pushing white supremacy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that is the crux of everything that they do. The lack of consciousness because of a lack of education,
Yeah.
a lack of exposure to information, a lack of critical process.
Yeah.
They perpetuate a condition that constantly feeds their own subjugation and their own undermining. Right? And because it's such a non-idea to think and to be to express intelligence.
Yeah.
Like how they made being dumb cool is mastery.
Right.
That's absolute.
You know that's only in
Genius.
America like that. It's only in America like that.
I know.
It's
but I've
crazy,
seen,
yeah.
I've been to other countries and I've seen how anybody in other countries who's assimilated with American youth culture,
yeah.
they
It's over
buy
with.
into
Oh, yeah.
that. They buy, like I was in London in 2017, and the way that they believe and take literally what the rappers are saying. They literally believe that they literally are doing the things that they say they're
Well,
doing.
I
in their
thought I
songs.
had to do that too. No lie. Growing up in Memphis, I used to listen to Project Pat, 3-6 Mafia. I thought I had to do those things. That serious. And so that's why I read earlier, it said, evil communication corrupts good manner. You know, all praise to the Most High and it changed. But I heard that and I'm literally thinking like, cause you know, I didn't have no father figure. So when you growing up, you listening to this stuff, you think you gotta be having sex with all these women. You think you gotta be selling drugs. You think when you broke, you gotta go and rob you a nigga. That's what it say. I'm gonna rob you. You think you gotta bust it, like just the music. You ever listen to just Memphis music like that?
Yeah.
And then what ended up happening, I'm gonna tell you what happened with music that helped shift things in Memphis. Cause Memphis is called home of the crossers. And it's 70% black. It's 70% us and the majority of us in poverty there. So it flipped when Yo Gotti started rapping, cause he got to start rapping about hustling. So now everybody want to hustle now. So that actually helped out a lot. But now it done went back to drill music. And now like the murder rate is at an all-time high. It's like one of the second most dangerous cities in America. And for it to have the little amount of people it have, it is what's so crazy though. They were like, this city got less people than Chicago, but the crime rate is more dangerous than Chicago. That's how bad it is in Memphis right now. You know, so they're like, when it comes to music, oh, it's real influential there. They think they got to do what the music say. Like, you know them shiesty masses everybody wearing? That started in Memphis with rapper Blue Shiesty. Now they wearing them. I just left Australia a couple weeks ago. The guy act like he putting a shiesty mask on in Australia. So I'm out there teaching, you know, like I'm from the street. So he get to doing that. I act like I'm putting a shiesty mask on. And it to calm him down because he seemed like, oh, okay, hold on now. He could tell the American accent. But what you're saying is like the blacks here. And this why it's important right here too, for people to hear from you, you know what I'm saying, hear from people like you also, is that the blacks in America influence black culture everywhere.
That's facts.
Everywhere.
That's facts.
It's amazing. I want to read this real quick because it's still dealing with, when we was talking about education, I want to jump back here because I was saying it got to start with identity first. We don't know who we are. We need to be able to identify. That's why they won't give us reparations. The white man will never pay reparation to individual people. They always pay reparations to nations, to countries, or to empires. They ain't gonna never sit up here and say, I'm gonna cut all you niggas a check. You know, it's crazy.
Even though they know it's gonna, majority of it's gonna come right back.
It's gonna come right back to them. They ain't gonna do it. We don't got no, we have not learned to sit up there to identify as one people yet. I want to read this. It say, now this is going back to Deuteronomy 28 verse 15. It say, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee. Matter of fact, I want to read a couple curses, and then I want to ask you, what do you, when you hear it, how can you relate that to something that took place in the past? I want to see what you say first. I'm going to read verse 32. It say, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given into another people, and thy eyes shall look and fill with longing for them all the day long, and there should be no might in thy hand. When you hear that, what comes to mind?
I mean, what it's saying is that you're going to lose your children, right. And you're going to have a long, hard time trying to find them, trying to redeem your children.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And what I can relate it to is a specific point in my life where I was in Baltimore. It's 1990. It's on the west side. I was out there. We had a heroin operation going out there. And I'm watching these two little boys one summer afternoon. And must have been probably about 11 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And one little boy maybe was 2 or so, maybe close to 3. The other one was about 5. The smaller one was wearing a pamper and looked to be a little bit, I guess it could have been a pull-up or whatever, maybe he shouldn't have been in a pamper at that point, but if there's no investment of time and training, then you know how that goes.
Yeah.
Right? So all he had on was a pamper. No shirt, no shoes, no nothing. The other kid had on underwear. That's it. They're outside, sitting on this stoop. So a little kid was walking down the street. When I say a little kid, I'm talking about like a 16-year-old kid. And he's got on a little fresh outfit. Fila was very popular at the time. So he's walking down the street in this little Fila outfit. And he's got a tray of French fries in one hand. He's got a soda in another that he bought from the corner store. And he stops, and I guess he must have got a page. So he stops, hands the older kid his soda, checks his pager, smiles, put the pager back, grabs the soda from the kid, takes a sip, gives him the soda back, gives the smaller kid what's left of his fries. Then he goes on about his business. The larger kid sucks up his soda real fast and then turns around and takes the fries from the smaller kid. Now I'm sitting across the street. I had locks then.
Yeah.
So I couldn't have my hair exposed because nobody had locks in Baltimore. So it would have been very easy to say, the guy with they call them plaits.
Yeah. The
guy with the plaits. So I kept a hoodie on at all times. And I just walked and walked and walked and walked and never really stood still. All right. So I'm in the shadow of this little opening of this doorway, this abandoned row house.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of just peeping. And when the larger kid grabbed the smaller kid's fries, scoffed them down, the smaller kid didn't cry. He just looked straight ahead. He just went like this. Nothing. And I'm looking and I'm watching and I'm going, by the time that kid, in 10 years, when that kid's 12, 13 years old, he's going to be a killer.
Yeah.
And that older one, It's larceny at heart. He's going to be a dope fiend. I do not want to be here with those kids in 10 years. I definitely do not want to be here. So one of my lieutenants walks up. My street name is Bob, or my family name is Bob. He walks up and says, "Yo, Bob, what's up? What you doing?" I said, just watching these little ones right here. He's like, yeah, like he's looking at their condition.
Yeah.
Kid with the pamper, like the pamper's been on them for days.
Yeah.
All right. And I mean, they're outside in their underwear and pampered, like it's neglect, obviously.
Yeah.
So I say, yo, we gotta do what we gotta do and get on, because I don't want to be here when them kids grow up, because we're gonna have to kill them.
Yeah.
And that was one of those points that something stood out to me and it stuck with me. And I was always a person who was taught to think critically, even before the term critical thinking was introduced to me.
Right.
I thought about it, and I started to, just build on it. And I was like, yeah, this town is going to be unoccupiable, in the next 5 years or so. This is going to be unoccupiable, And sure enough, 95, I was out of there.
Yeah.
By 97, I was out of the game, period. By 99, I started getting reports back from Baltimore. This one got killed, that one got killed, this one got killed, that one. It's the kids. The kids are killing all the older guys.
Killing everybody.
Yes. The kids are killing everybody.
Yeah.
And I was saying it back then. I said, if we don't get a hold of these children, we're going to be fighting them, for survival, because whom do they have proximity to? If they're not, as those children weren't, they're not being given nurturing, they're not being given guidance, they're not being shown love, they're not being given empathy. What are you going to threaten them with?
Right.
Go put you in jail? Oh, okay, so that I'll know where I'm going to eat for the next few days or months or whatever. Yeah. I know where I'm going to sleep. Okay, cool. So until you do that, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Oh, well, then we'll kill you. Oh, you mean then I won't have to worry about none of this shit no more?
That's okay. The mindset.
Okay, well then whenever you give me the incarceration or death, then I'll be, I'll deal with that then. Until then, I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing, because I don't have enough sense of self-preservation or self-value to make any self-protective, self-preservational, decisions at this point.
Yeah.
Because that's not what's been developed into me.
I want to go back to the scripture again. Mm-hmm. It said, "Thy sons and daughters shall be given to another people." So another people is talking about a people different from your people. Talking about another race of people. Mm-hmm. It say, "Thy eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there should be no might in thy hand." It ain't gonna be no might in your hand to get your children back from this other race of people right here. So we know that from looking at this sounds like this looks like the transatlantic slave trade. But on top of it, verse 33 say, "The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always." So over there on the west coast of Africa, we had kingdoms set up. We had a whole area that we call Negro land, and we had kingdoms where when we fled from Jerusalem in 70 AD, because that's where originally our people from, and I do got some that I put together on identity that I want to read. But when we fled from Jerusalem in 70 AD, we followed the White Nile down into the interiors of Africa. So following the reason why we followed the White Nile down, because we want to stay next to the water source. Now, 70 AD, Roman generals Titus and Vespasian, these white people, these Edomites, they came and destroyed the city. Matter of fact, they sieged it. The same thing that you're seeing that's going over there in Palestine now, that actually literally happened to us. So we fled down into Africa following the White Nile, and we started, we called ourselves the House of Judah at first. It later on became the Bantu tribes. So when you hear about Bantu speaking tribes, that was the House of Judah. That was us right there, or the people of Judah. We established kingdoms there. And with these kingdoms, we had diamonds, we had golds. It's just like Ghana is known to be the Gold Coast. Sierra Leone is known for the diamonds. Liberia is known for the rubber. So when they say the fruit of thy land, that's talking about the resources that the land bring forth. Those fruits of riches right there. Those things right there. Imagine if Liberia was able to keep that rubber and they was to be Firestone or Goodyear. Them ties on everything. Everything. Imagine how Liberia looked. The same thing with Ghana. Imagine if Ghana was to keep their gold and profit from their gold. Think about what's going on in France right now. Burkina Faso. You know, they got a young, he got their young president. You see all that gold he produced?
Yep.
And they did what? They put sanctions on their gold and said, anybody buy it. If anybody buy it, we cut you off. We ain't gonna deal with you. He can't even sell a gold to make that country powerful. So
He's doing all right though.
Yeah, he's doing good.
He's doing just fine.
He's doing good. You know who?
And greed will make them move. They will move.
What's the name of the other guy that came before him?
Hold his position. That's it.
Thomas Sankofa. You remember him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so I love black revolutionaries. And that's the thing that we try to push on our people. We got to learn to be revolutionary. Ain't no change going to come if our people don't start to revolt. And they got to stop that mindset of self-destruction first.
So when you say revolutionary, be specific. What do you, because not everybody understands that being revolutionary is even the simple act of moving outside of the systems of subjugation, like educating yourself, is a revolutionary act.
Yeah.
That's a revolutionary act that, so that people understand that they don't need to, not everybody has warrior in them.
Right.
Not everybody has got that dog in them. You dig what I'm saying?
Hey, you on point. Can I read this? So I'm gonna answer that question with what you just, with what I got written down right here. It say in the game of life, and look, audience, I want y'all to understand this, or the people that's gonna be tuning in. It say, in the game of life, understanding our identity and unity is crucial for success. It say, many of us feel lost. Understanding our identity. Many of us feel lost because we haven't fully grasped who we are or where we come from. Knowing our roots and heritage is essential to understanding our place in the world and the unique qualities we bring it in. Overcoming division. Division weakens us. When we fight amongst ourselves, we lose sight of common goals and diminish our collective strength. Unity is key to overcoming obstacles and achieving shared success. Embracing more guidance. It says a lack of moral grounding can lead to confusion and misdirection. The commandments of God provide a framework for living with integrity, compassion, and purpose. But adhering to these principles, we can build a more harmonious and just society. So it's just going back to first what I was saying with division. I noticed you had a quote, and let me get it real quick, about division. I have always seen gang affiliation as a hollow pursuit of false sense of power rooted in division. Right there, gang affiliation. So a lot of our people don't know the gangs constantly keeping us divided. We always speaks about in the 60s our people was together. You can see the Black Power movements like the Black Panthers. You can see the men and women together. And then the drugs, the crack come in. For sure, the crack come in. It destroyed all of that. Even like I told you, like when I joined the gang, I joined for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Because I was seeing I was at school, I'm looking at my desk, and I'm seeing all the signs on the desk. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what is this? So I called my partner. He from Lemoyne God Projects. It's like me. I was like, bro, what is this stuff right here? And he was like, well, this AVLN, this the Almighty Vice Lord Nation. So I told him I want to be down. I said, I want to learn what this is. And what they did, I took an oath, and they gave me a thick sheet. I mean, like 50 pages, a thick book with 50 pages with the principles, codes of conduct, like statements, that, like literally statement of love or father heart. So anybody that, if y'all come from their life, you know what I'm talking about. You know, they gave, all of these was like foundational principles. none of them were living by. Next thing you know, you get into all types of stuff. Yeah.
It sounds good.
But what I learned was we was divided. Now, you said so earlier dealing with the criminal world. So once I got on out there, once I started selling drugs and I started making a lot of money, I understand that, okay, it ain't necessarily working with different gangs like that. So in Memphis, what ends up happening is you can be associated with the different gangs. But once you start making money, you'll find out, okay, well, my plug right here, he a GD. I'm a vice lord. I'm not gonna fight him. You wanna know why? Cause he giving me the product and I'm making a lot of money dealing with him. Then I also deal with these dudes that's Crips. And what ended up happening is y'all start pledging loyalty to each other in these circles, and now you didn't create, like in Memphis we call them mobs, you know what I'm saying, or mafias, different type of mobs and mafias. You create your own set, meaning this stuff that you really had allegiance to, I become anybody killer. I kill any one of y'all to protect this money over here. I don't care what he claiming, and he don't care what you claiming no more. Because now if you step on his toe, you be ready to kill. So it just caused a lot of division right there, with the gang mentality and lifestyle, especially when money sit up there come in.
That's right.
Yeah.
At the bottom line, I mean, when you're a younger person, like when you got involved, you probably didn't have the concerns that an adult would have. Now, you move through life, you get a little older, you start thinking about, paying for things and stuff like that. Priorities shift.
Yeah.
So it's not about being included. That's not where your value system is anymore. That's not where your concern is anymore. Your concern now is how am I going to pay these bills, and how am I going to provide myself with the lifestyle that I want,
right.
And what does me, twisting my fingers up and doing a special handshake have to do with that?
Right. Y'all hear that, don't it? For real. When you get older, cause that's another thing with young men, they'll understand when they get older. So, like I was telling you earlier, I started getting older and I started like, man, look, I'm getting into stuff. I'm not starting this. You got some other people that get into it with somebody at a club, they want to fight, or just all types of just BS stuff happen that we shouldn't even really be involving ourselves in. And what you sit up there and say, look, it's time for me to sit up here and separate myself from this stuff. That's because right. It ain't no organization here. And if you chasing money, then you don't want to sit up there. You don't want to stop your money flow because of they get into little petty stuff that can basically stop your money flow. So you don't, you want to get away from that. I want to read a scripture real quick in Proverbs chapter, I think it was 16, verse 23. Let me find, I just had it. It say, there's a way that seemeth right to a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. I remember when I thought I was out there in the streets, like I had my mind made up, and this goes back to them young men that you was talking about, that a lot of these young dudes, they don't care. So when I was out there, I got to the point that I didn't care. I wasn't worried about going to jail. I knew I was gonna burn out. I'm like, I'm gonna burn out, I'm gonna get a lawyer, I'm gonna fight the case, I'm gonna fight as long as I can, And when I get back out of jail, I'm going right back to the same block to get that money. Because once you start seeing some real money come in, and that's for a lot of, I guess, people out there, that when you see some money coming in, or you got a goal or direction that you're aiming to, and you know that it's success there and you done touch something, then you want to keep getting it. You don't want it to stop. I remember me and my brother had the conversation. We like, look, man, we ain't never going broke again. Like, this it. I remember, like, I wrote a song about it. I was like, I'm in my room, door closed, high shaking and shaking, saying Indian style, pump in my lap, trapped in the matrix. Now, this real story that I'm in the room shaking, I'm broke, y'all. I'm tired of being broke. I'm like, man, I was never a robber, I'm always a hustler, but I'm broke. And I'm listening to this music too. Project Patio, they talk about, I'm gonna rob it, So now I'm like, man, I'm ready to take it. But then I did have a level of morality there. Every time I got locked up, I read the Bible. So it was certain stuff that I'm like, I don't want to rob nobody. I'm a hustler. I ain't no robber. It's two different type of things. I don't want to rob nobody. But a lot of our young men, they don't understand that right there. The street life, it'll seem right to you, but the end of let me read it again. It say, "There's way that seem right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death." It's either gonna end in death, you know. So, like when this understanding came to me that we are the Israelites that the Bible speaks of, and I started reading the curses. I want to read another curse real quick. Let me read this. This Deuteronomy chapter. So I just read verse 32 where it said, "Our sons and daughters going to be given to another people." I know that happened to us. That's transatlantic slave trade. Our sons was given into the hands of the white man during the transatlantic slave trade.
It's and also the prison industrial complex.
Yeah. I actually got that up in here too. Yeah. And it say, "The fruit of thy labor and all the fruit of thy land and all thy labor shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up." Who eating up the gold in Ghana? The white man. Who eating up the gold? Just any other European empire. Because a lot of people, and this for people that's listening, you know, a lot of y'all to think that we just a racist hate group. The scripture say in John chapter 8 verse 32, "You should know the truth, and the truth gonna make you free." They are eating up the resources in Ghana. They are eating up the resources in Sierra Leone. They cannot survive without African countries. Simple as that. They can't survive about that. Look what France. France said, "Look, if Burkina Faso break free from them and try to get their independence, they sat up there and said, we gonna go to war with you." They literally threatened them with war. Why? France can't survive without Burkina Faso. I want to read verse 45.
It's like a woman trying to leave an abusive man.
Right.
And he said, "If I can't have you, nobody can."
Right.
You know, I'll kill you before I let you leave me.
Did Ike Turner say that? Nah, he said, yeah, he did say that. Did Ike Turner say, "If you leave me, I kill you"? Did he say? Nah, he said, "If I die, I kill you." That's what he said. Okay, hold on. Let me read this. It say, verse 45. It say, "Moreover, all these curses." And a lot of people, I want y'all to understand. When it say curses, it's not talking about black skin is a curse. That was taught by Mormon people. What's the name of the Mormon Bible they had? That's the Church of Latter-day Saints teaching. They sat up there and said black skin was a curse. It say, "Moreover, all these curses," it's talking about evil, "shall come upon thee and pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever." So Moses was saying that curses will be upon the Israelite as a sign of who they are today. Meaning, look at the cities. It say evils was going to be happening to them in the cities. Evils was going to happen to them in the fields. The sons and daughters going to be given to another race of people. It'll be no might in their hand. The same with, what's the name of that? With child CPS, the Child Protective Services and stuff like that. They can come take your child away, and then you really don't have no power to get them back. They take your child away, give them away to another family, or sell them away to another family, and you'll never see your child again. It say, "And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder upon thy seed forever, because that service not the Lord thy God with joyfulness, with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee." When I was coming up, I used to always wonder, like, why in the hell did our people go into slavery? And then when I read this, it said the Lord gonna send your enemies against you. And he said you're gonna have to serve them in one of all things. It say, in hunger. So I'm reading this and I'm like, hold on. We have to go to our enemies for food. We don't control the grocery stores. We don't control the production of food. It say, and in thirst, we don't control the water. They literally control the water. They passed a law. Was it here in South Carolina what to do with collecting rainwater? Mm-hmm. It was a guy collecting rainwater, and they tried to fine him for collecting rainwater.
Yeah, I remember that in Georgia too.
Yeah, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. It say, and in nakedness, we don't control the production of clothes. We might put our names on them, but when it comes to the textiles and the stuff the material that we need to make these clothes, we don't control that. And it say, and it want of all things, anything you want. You want a job, a house, an ID, anything you want. It said you got to go to your enemies for, and then it said he should put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And then I start seeing images of us with the yokes of iron on our necks, on our hands, on our chain. They still do that in Georgia today. They called it the chain gang, right, y'all?
Yep.
Chain gang.
That's
They
right.
still doing it. Where they got our people chained and shackled right there.
Striped suits too.
Yeah. The striped suits, all that. And then in Mississippi, they still got them picking cotton.
Yeah.
In Mississippi, so that goes right back to curse should not be in the city in the field. Remember the 13th Amendment, right? It said you only free from slavery unless you commit a crime. Once you commit a crime, you really a slave again.
That's right.
So that's how you get
Once
to
you get
prison.
caught and convicted
Right.
for committing a crime.
So that's one of the main things of our group. We sit up there, we go out and try to tell our people crime is necessarily sin. I want to read another scripture real quick, and then I got a question for you. I want to read Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6. I had my read over there, but I was like, nah, let me read some of this stuff today. Mm-hmm. Okay, this Hosea 4, and not verse 1, it say, hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel. So that's, you heard the teachers before. That's what we teach. I hope you can see right off top that we totally different from them other groups, Mm-hmm. Especially when the way we deal with our people, the way we conduct ourselves, and the way we deal with the other nations too. We ain't no hate group, and we ain't finna go spewing hate on another. We got a mission. The mission is to gather our people together worldwide, because we have been promised rulership of the earth. The Bible prophecies is real, and we believe that. It say, for the Lord have a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. By swearing and lying, and killing and stealing, and committing adultery, they break out, and blood touch blood. So the Lord said he got a problem with our people. Because we do that. We swear. Think what they say now. The biggest thing they say, you hear the young men saying, on God. I swear to God, or on God. You don't supposed to swear on God. They say, in lying and killing. Look at the drill culture. They rap about destroying each other, and stealing, and committing adultery. That's big and rapid in our communities.
All immoral behavior.
All immoral behavior. The Lord said he got a problem with that. It's a, we do these things, they break out and blood touch blood. That's where you get the black on black crime from. We kill each other more than any other race of people.
Black on black crime is propaganda created by white supremacists, man. Black on black crime is not a real thing.
You don't think it's real?
It's not a real thing. It's just human beings. People kill the people whom they have proximity to.
Yeah.
There's no white on white crime.
I heard people say that.
Asian on Asian crime. There's black on black crime is a term that was created to further criminalize the idea of being black. It's not something that we should be propagating. We should not be saying that as though it's a thing that we are specifically or particularly afflicted with. Human beings kill the people whom they have proximity to. So if a black person lives in a predominantly black environment, then he's going to have conflicts with the people in his environment.
Understood.
Just like white people, just like Asian people, but you don't hear that term being used in terms of those other groups.
Right, Asian on Asian.
You have to be mindful about the subconscious, the very sneaky ways that supremacist ideas, white supremacist ideology slips into your subconscious.
Understood.
And works itself, and has you, as you're saying one thing on one hand, you're perpetuating the very thing that you're speaking about on the other hand.
Right.
That's where conscious and critical thinking comes from.
Yeah.
I critically think about everything that I say and everything that I hear.
Right.
Which for many people is problematic.
Yeah. No, that's on point. That's on point with what you said, because I done heard that saying multiple times. Hey, Asians, they do kill each other. White folks kill each other. All nations do it. So even with that term coming out like that, we necessarily produce the crime. Although it is happening, we do kill one another. And we do kill one another at high rates.
Higher rates than whom?
Hell, majority of all nations, because when you think about,
whom?
well, I look at it like this.
You do realize that the same person that you said controls the food production, that controls the water,
they also
control the statistical information.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. So
Don't think they limit their control to anything.
So I want to ask you this with the drill music, right? Now, I don't think they limit their control. Hell
No, they don't.
No,
they exercise
right.
it in every way possible.
All their power. Yeah. Because we don't got no human resource. That goes right back to the curses. So you understand that we are captive by another nation of people, right?
We are captive by an ideology that is that we've assimilated and have accepted as our own. We think our thoughts are our thoughts. They're not our thoughts.
So I'm
They're
asking
not
you,
our thoughts.
what is the ideology?
What is the ideology?
Yeah, what is the ideology?
White supremacists.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the ideology.
So look, I need you to go a little further.
We have white supremacists living in our subconscious.
Hey, I'm glad you said that. I need you to go a little farther. And what do you think is the foundation of white supremacy right here in America?
The foundation of it is the system that's controlled by white people. Education is the foundation of it.
Okay.
The information that people consume, from the religious ideas to the
Thank you. That's what I want you to get to right there.
It's all the foundation of it all is the religious.
Yeah,
the
Christianity.
That's the foundation of it all.
Christianity, yeah.
And has been for time immemorial.
Yeah.
That has always been the foundation, because everything came out of that. The idea of educating people, period. Right. There was a time when people were not given access to education.
You read the Willie Lynch letter?
Huh?
You read the Willie Lynch letter?
Of course, I teach it. It's in my book. It's in Old Gangsters and Young Guns.
All right.
You know.
And tell them the name of your book. Tell them the name of your book so they can check it out.
Well, my first book is my autobiography. That's Raised by Wolves.
Okay.
Inside the Life and Mind of a Guerrilla Hustler. This is my life story. This started out as my personal diary.
All right.
So this book is written as though no one was ever going to read it.
Okay.
So no names and no dates. Nothing's changed in here.
Yeah.
Everything is as it is.
Gotcha.
You know. And this is my third book. My second book, I don't have physical copies of it anymore, but it's a political fiction piece about how the mob and the CIA conspired to put the first black president in office. It's called Get Smart.
Yeah.
All right. And this is my third book. This is an anthology of the top 10 stories that I did in my first publication, which was called Don Diva Magazine.
Okay.
Right. And this is Old Gangsters and Young Guns.
Okay.
Old Gangsters and Young Guns is a collection of those top 10 stories that includes Larry Hoover, Boy George, E-Port Posse, Akbar Prey, My Crew, Sex, Money, and Murder, BMF, Junior Black Mafia out of Philadelphia, Keith Gaffney out of DC, the real Paid in Full story, the actual Paid in Full story, because I knew everybody involved on both sides, the kidnappees, the kidnappers, right? And there are parts, like these stories were featured in my publication in different episodes or different issues, but because of the limited amount of space that you can dedicate to a particular story, because a magazine it's got multiple subject matter, right? So there's a lot of stuff that had to be edited out, you know, for the sake of space, because there are images included. So in this book, I go into depth in a way that I was not able to go into depth in those articles. And then I intersperse these articles with the relevant information from a psychosocial perspective, to put the choices and behaviors of the individuals featured in these stories into perspective so that people can have a deeper understanding. It's not as though we are more inclined towards antisocial criminal behavior than any other people.
Okay.
But if you don't understand the mitigating circumstances around the choices and behaviors, and you have a system that is constantly propagating this idea that we participate in and feed ourselves by creating things like drill music and perpetuating imagery like, you know, pimping and gun toting and all the kind of stuff, whatever, because we've been able to monetize it to a degree, right? And it also contributes largely to a lot of our sense of self-worth and value. Then you really don't get that there are underlying circumstances that give way to these behaviors. You as the person committing the behaviors, and people who are outside of our communities, whether they are black or otherwise, because there are many black conservative people who have never had the exposure or the experiences or the influences, been subject to the influences that gave way to our behaviors as
Right.
people in the street. And they look at us like any other person would look at us and be like, something's wrong with these niggas. Something's wrong with them. You need to do something about them.
Right.
You need to lock them up. You need to send them somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I put things like the Willie Lynch letter,
Yeah.
which you'd be surprised, and maybe not, because you probably have opportunity to bring it up pretty frequently.
Yeah.
How many people still have no idea what the Willie Lynch letter is?
Right.
How many black people still never heard of it?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But they can tell you how many mixtapes Lil Wayne put out.
Right. Who the GOAT?
Right.
Who the GOAT? And see,
Right.
that's why they got to hear from people like you.
Right.
They got to hear from
my
people
fourth
like you
book.
that come from their background.
This is my fourth book. It's called 50 Critical Quotes. This is 50 of my personal quotes that I adapted over my lifetime. I have hundreds of them.
Yeah.
Right. But this is 50 of them.
So look, hey, check out, I do something called Proverb of the Day. And what I do, like, I got a bunch of personal quotes that I come up with myself. I put them on TikTok probably pretty much every day or every other day. And exactly what you said, it helps me. I start coming up with them because I have something that I be going through in the day, and I overcome it, and then I say in my head whatever that took place within that day. So it got to the point that I'm like, I start writing it down, and that goes back to like the book I created called The Mindset of a Leader. Also, The Mindset of a Leader, I created that because I call them, people in the world, they call them words of affirmation. I always call them trigger words because I know how to trigger myself to complete my goals or to push myself. And so I put it all in a book to sit up there for younger people who read. They can help push themselves too. They let them know like, hey, how a leader think, how they push, how they keep going, how not to give up, you know what I'm saying? How to look at certain things a certain way and then say, look, you're gonna tackle it, overcome it, and keep going. It's basically based upon never going up. Never giving up. Hey, so like if you get time, check out my Proverbs of the Day, you'll be like, hey, hey, you'll see like, hey, we kind of got the same thinking in a way.
Well, see, that is because the circumstances that gave way to the choices that you made, many years after myself, I'm almost 60.
Yeah.
Right? So the choices that, or the circumstances that gave way to the behaviors and responses that made you make the choices you made are the same as the ones that were the catalyst for my behavior.
Yeah.
That's why when you tell your truth, as I did in Raised by Wolves, when you tell your truth, it's relatable to people because it's true. It's true of the nature of people.
Right.
Right? It's about conditions and responses to conditions.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter that you came, a generation after me, just like it doesn't matter that I came a generation after, Ronnie Bump.
Right.
It's the same stuff.
Same thing.
It's the same things. It's, these unaddressed social economic conditions that are being deliberately perpetuated.
Yeah.
Even perfected.
Constantly.
Right?
Won't
To be weapons of control.
And war.
You understand?
Yeah, it's war. It's literally war
Exactly.
going on against us, and we'll fight amongst ourselves. The thing is, like,
That's because we have proximity to ourselves.
Right.
It's the same reason for the crime that we commit amongst ourselves.
yeah, but
If we had proximity, why do you think they don't want us living
Yeah.
where they're living? Because then we would have proximity to our offenders,
right,
and then we'd be inclined to attack them.
yeah, but the communication that they pushing towards us though, that's heavily affects our people, and then just not having that identity there too. Think about. So I want to ask you this: do you think our people? All right, I'm gonna ask you this: how do we build a community? What do you think the steps is? Because you're a wise man, I can tell, especially in your speech and everything. What do you think the steps it takes for us to build the community?
Key to everything is education, brother. The reason we don't have community now to the degree that we should, and if you watch my lives, I do a live every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time with one of my sons. His name is Ty Mills. He's a comedian.
Okay.
And it's called We Pop and Son. And one of the constant themes that I espouse about is the fact that we use terms in a general way without having a real understanding of what they are indicative of. To say community is to say common unity. There is no evidence that we largely have a common unity. So I don't perpetuate those things. I'm not going to give an attribute to a circumstance that doesn't apply just because it's, I'm not going to say somebody sneezes and I say God bless you just because people say that when I know it's nonsense, right? So I'm not going to say, the community and keep referring to something that I know doesn't exist, because that will enable it to continue not to exist.
Right.
I'm contributing to the counter of bringing about community by making people think it's not something we're missing. We are missing that. We don't have community. And to answer your question directly, the key is always education.
Right.
Always. It's always about increasing one's knowledge of self.
Yeah.
First, as you said multiple times since we've been speaking,
Yeah.
determining and understanding who you are, because your identity has been taken from you.
Right.
Your truth has been taken from you. The reality of who you are has been taken from you. For you to have the degree of pride and encounter to that. First of all, let me finish my sentence. To have the degree of self-worth and pride that you need in order to counter the propaganda set against you, you need to have an understanding of who you are. Yeah. You need to have an understanding of how how you are worthy of the respect that you say you want. And then you need to be exemplary of that.
Yeah.
All right. And two, you need to understand that as you have been lied to about your inferiority, the people who are not you have been lied to about their superiority.
Right.
They literally believe this propaganda and these lies about their superiority. Now, what causes them severe cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance is when you have two ideas that oppose one another, you hold them at the same time.
Yeah.
So you believe, that, this is up, but it's also down. When you have that going on, as many of them do, the non-melanated people, then it creates volatile conditions. So if you're constantly being told how much better you are just by virtue of you lacking this intergalactic melanin, this chemical, this thing called melanin, and just because you don't have this thing that is in all, it's in the galaxy, it's in all living things, it's in the trees, it's everywhere, but even in white people, they just don't have a degree of it where you can see it.
Yeah.
Right. If you're being told that mere thing makes you more superior than another, first of all, it's counterintuitive. Firstly, doesn't make sense.
Right.
Secondly, if you're being told that, but you're constantly seeing people who you have some degree of idea have been subjugated and oppressed and undermined, yet they still continue to flourish. They still continue to do incredible, extraordinary things, even from the lowest point. Ain't nobody busting out like we are busting out from the worst of circumstances. Nobody's coming up out of the ghetto, out of the hood, out of none of that stuff like we are. And they have their versions of that. Yeah. They have the trailer parks and so forth, whatever. But any of them come out the trailer park doing what we're doing coming out of the hood.
Right. So
it's like, wait a minute now, they're supposed to be less than we are, but they keep busting our asses no matter what we do. Like, I don't understand. Where's my innate greatness? I'm a white man, damn it. Where's my innate greatness? Where is it?
Yeah.
I'm having a problem here. I'm not seeing it. I see a handful of white men that are doing really well, but the majority of us ain't shit.
You know what we call them? We call two-time losers. How you got a whole system set up to help you win. And we were talking about that earlier on up
That's
here.
the truth.
So, right over here, he got the newest Corvette. It looked like a Lambo.
Mm-hmm.
We walk in the store, and the white lady say, "That's a really nice car." I said, "Yeah, he got it." You know, I'm just joking with her. You know, the brother do well for us. All praise to the Most High for that. But I was like, "Yeah, he got it." And that's the problem with them. They'll see that and be like, "How the hell this dude get this car?"
Right.
But I'm stuck here at the
Right.
gas station
Oh, I've been
in
dealing
that
with that
car.
all my life.
Yeah, I know.
I've been dealing with that all my life.
I want to read something dealing with community. Because you're right. What's it? I forgot the name of the doctor. Claude Anderson.
Mm-hmm. I love Claude Anderson.
I love
It's
him
too
too.
bad that people don't listen more to Claude Anderson.
love that dude.
Claude Anderson has been trying to really tell us exactly what we need to do, exactly
The
what's going
foundations to
on
build.
for 50 years, man.
Yeah,
For
with group
50 years.
with group economics.
Yes.
He on point with that too.
That's right.
I like it.
Powernomics.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, bro, he's still. And he's been telling us, like, if you don't get it together, he's been telling us for 40, 50 years, if you don't get it together, this is what's going to happen.
gonna
This
be
is
left
what-
behind, yeah.
And everything he has said would be the condition if we did not get it together has progressively become the condition.
And it's happening.
That's because he's not speculating.
Right.
Right? This man has held some very significant positions in this government.
Yeah.
Right? He's held positions. He's one of the first black men to hold some of the positions he's held.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So he's had insight. He's peeked behind their curtain. He knows exactly what's what. You understand what I'm saying? So there is a median household income projection that by 2053, black people who are already on the lowest rung of the economic ladder will be earning a median household income of 0 by 2053.
Woo! He
Zero.
said we the lowest on the totem pole right now, and we can't. It's gonna almost be impossible for us to, bridge that wealth gap.
That's
and
right.
one of the reasons why, because we don't practice group economics.
That's
We
right.
ain't together.
That's right.
We can't.
That's right.
We identify as Baptists. We identify as Seventh-day Adventists. We identify as white supremacists or teachings like you was bringing out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we identify with that. And one of the things he said, we don't got a neighborhood. He said, because it ain't no neighbors in there. We only got hoods. And he said, the reason why it ain't a neighborhood, because the neighbor, when you read the Bible, it say you're supposed to love your neighbor as you love yourself. In order to do that, not steal from them, not kill from your neighbor, so it's a certain way you got to treat your neighbor. We ain't going to sell drugs to our neighbor. We ain't going to do none of that stuff.
That's
Why?
right.
Because we love them like we love ourselves.
That's how the Italians were.
Yeah.
My family was brought into the game by the Italians.
Yeah.
Right? The Italians did not sell drugs in their neighborhoods.
Right. Now, I think even when you deal with like China and stuff like that, everybody's sending their stuff over here because they know Americans gonna consume it.
Mm-hmm.
They getting it in through Mexico. They know we gonna consume it. One of the points I did want to take, going back, I want to read a scripture. I want to read two scriptures real quick. I want to read Ecclesiasticus chapter 25 in verse 1. And it's saying, 3 things I was beautified. And it stood beautiful both before God and men. The unity of brethren, the love of neighbors, and a man and a wife that agree together. That's one of the ways we can sit up there to have a community. You got to have the unity of brethren. We got to come together. We got to come together and organize as one people, identify ourselves as one people. It's because the Bible was never about religion. The white man took our records because the word Bible comes from the Hebrew word biblios, which means records. This is just a record of a nation of people and their encounter with God. That's it. And that was our record right there, And it say the love of neighbors, which is talking about how man and woman, how we treat each other on a daily basis. And then it say a man and a wife that agree together. This is going into marriage. When you read Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4, I don't want to read that because we lack this in our, now we do lack this. We know we lack in this. It says marriage is honorable in all, in the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. In order for us to build successful communities, we got to marry our women. We got to marry our women. We got to bring forth families. I actually did a proverb of the day about that. You know what I'm saying? Which with marriage comes a community. With a community comes a nation. And with a nation becomes a kingdom. A lot of our people, they go to church and they hear about the kingdom of God, the kingdom of God. And one of the things I learned through world travel, every nation already got their kingdom set up here on earth. And then we'll read Luke chapter 18, verse 20. It say the kingdom of God don't come by observation. It's in you. A lot of people don't understand it's on us to go out and create and build this kingdom. It starts within us first. And that's one of the main reasons why we've been pushing the law so heavy. That's how we get the love of neighbors. Look, I ain't going to steal from you. Why? Because I love you. I ain't going to have sex with your wife. Why? Because I love you. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to murder you. Why? Because I love you. Those principles and morals got to be taught back to our people. When I brought up something earlier about when I was selling crack, and I was looking at, like, I didn't like men coming to me like that and begging, like, please, bro. Because I told folks, like, look, bro, if you see me standing there, they couldn't even come down the street. You got to find a phone, and I'm going to bring it to you because I didn't want my spot to be hot and stuff like that. But I just didn't like what it did to men. So I'd say probably after 3 months of that, I was like, I'm through with that. I was good with selling weed. I was making plenty of money doing that. There was just one of my partners, he come to me, he was like, look, man, you already booming. And what I did when I started selling it, I get them large amounts of it. And people, I had all the drug dealers over there in the area that was pissed at me because they know, like, look, bro, you stepping outside what you really regularly deal with. You supposed to deal with weed. Now you selling rocks and you selling bricks. Like, you getting these folks too much. But that's what I was taught. I was taught always to give them more than what they pay for. And it just blew the hell up. And it got to the point, next thing you know, I know that some of them probably sending the police around there on me because it blew up to a point. And then I was like, I don't like the way, and I was like, weed ain't doing folks like that. I just stick with selling weed, you know what I'm saying? I didn't like it. And when I learned the truth of the Bible, I started to realize, like, I see why I didn't like doing none of that. Because initially, and this is just for y'all listening online, a lot of us, when we get, it's different for me than you. When I got in the game, because I did grow up, you grew up in it, you know, you seen it, you was taught it and stuff like that. Now, I did see my brother, daddy cooking crack on the stove and stuff like that coming up, but my mama, she tried to keep us away from doing this stuff. And when I got out there, I just got tired of being broke. You know, it's like, I got to get some money. Everybody doing it. Look, I know the plug right here. I'm going to holler at him, and then it's on, you know. And a lot of us, we get in there, we get out there, when we jump in the game with a quest just to get money to try to make your conditions better. And then it get to the point where you see, like, hold on, I might be living a little better, but then I'm causing this damage here. You know, I'm causing this damage there. Okay, this got me shooting up stuff now. I shouldn't be, you know what I'm saying? It takes you on down a whole nother road when you just, look, I just want to get a little money.
As most people, if they last long enough, they have that same realization. Most people didn't start out going, I think I want to poison as many people as I possibly can from my community,
right?
And maybe contribute to as much addiction and deprivation as I possibly can. You know what I mean? No, everybody was like, I just want to get some money.
Right.
They're not even thinking about all of the other circumstances coming about from that one decision. Most of them start at a point or from a position of ignorance so great that they don't even have an understanding of the ramifications of actions. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
so
sir.
It's, you know, one day is I just want an outfit. Well, I got an outfit, want a chain. Well, I got a chain, I need a car. Well, I got a car, got to hook it up.
Right.
Well, when I'm gonna drive it to the projects, gotta get a house. Now, it's not about you choosing the street. It's now you have no choice but to do what you're doing because you don't have the qualifications or the information that enables you to have access to another means by which you can support this lifestyle you've established for yourself.
Right. I want to ask you, so looking back, do you feel like you were chasing something that was stolen from us as a people?
No, I was acting out of my indoctrination.
Okay, do you think
They
knowing...
may have been the ones who
Right.
influenced me. Maybe they did.
Yeah.
They grew up in Jim Crow. They grew
Yeah.
up in an era when racist white people didn't pretend not to be racist.
Right.
Right? So it was made very plain. Nigga, I have every intention of undermining you at every point and possible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I want to read some.
Know that you don't have any ways, as far as I'm concerned. I'm gonna make sure you don't. Like, so they weren't left with any illusions. You know?
I'm glad you brought that up.
I think we're returning back to that time if y'all paying attention.
Oh, it's going down for sure. This Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 18. I'm gonna read it out this time. And it say, cursed be the fruit of thy body, the fruit of thy land, increase of thy kind. Now hold on, I don't want to read this one. It's the next one. Verse 19. This Deuteronomy 28 verse 19. It say states, cursed shall thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shall thou be when thou goest out. This passage conveys a lifetime curse, one that follows the people from birth to death. It means that regardless of where they go, hardship, oppression, and struggle will pursue them. This curse is not limited to one location or specific stage of life, but it is a continuous condition from the moment one enters the world until the time one departs. It's a Ecclesiasticus 41:8-9 expands on this. Woe be unto you, ungodly men, which have forsaken the law of the Most High God. For if you increase, it shall be to your destruction. And if you be born, you shall be born to a curse. And if you die, a curse shall be your portion. It say this passage clarifies that those under the curse are born into suffering, live under oppression, and even in death, their legacy remains cursed. This is evident in the experience of African descendants who have faced oppressions from birth to the grave, whether through slavery, systemic racism, economic hardship, or social injustice. Baruch 3:10-11 describes the suffering of a displaced people. How happy is Israel that thou art in thy enemy's land, that thou art waxing old in a strange country, that thou art defiled with the dead, that thou art counted with them that go down into the grave. Now I want to get to the part, because you keep bringing up Jim Crow. It say the systemic destruction of black wealth. This page 19. It say the curse of the fruit of thy land is evident in the deliberate destruction of black wealth. Black Wall Street, a thriving black economy in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was burned to the ground by white mobs, erasing generational wealth. Rosewood Massacre 1923. A self-sufficient black town in Florida was destroyed and its residents were driven out. Gentrification. Black communities are being pushed out of major cities as property value rise, displacing families who have lived there for generations. Systemic land theft. Black farmers were denied loans, resources, and equal opportunities, leading to the loss of millions of acres of black-owned farmland. I got it up in here somewhere. I don't remember exactly what it was at, dealing with the Jim Crow and the sharecropping and stuff. But the thing is, it got to be in verse. I just don't want to waste too much time trying to find it. But I know it's in that chapter 20, when we went out of slavery. So curse shall that be when that cometh in, meaning cometh into the world or cometh into slavery. Then curse shall that be when thou goest out. Talking about going out of slavery. When we went out of slavery, they set up black codes, they set up Jim Crow, they set up sharecropping, all of these things to keep us down.
Redlining.
Yeah, redlining, and that's why I'm bringing the stuff out with Tulsa, Oklahoma. I actually got a short movie that I'm finna start working on, a short film dealing with, it's gonna be called A Generational Curse, and it's gonna show how from the destruction of Black Wall Street. So the way it's themed around is how the way it's themed is, I say put yourself in this in the picture right here. Let's just say that your father was a doctor, and you know you come from a two-parent household, father and mother a doctor. This during the time of 1921, Black Wall Street, and they come through. They destroy his practice, right? he dies during the race massacre. You flee. You gotta flee. Your mama flee with you. You 5 years old or so, and she come to another city, right? Now remember, now that legacy that you had as a doctor there, meaning for the most part, she sit up there. It goes from a point where her husband had a type of wealth that was gonna be passed down the family line. Now she had to flee and start back working for white people again. She basically for low pay, working in their houses after knowing how they just sat up there and destroyed their practice there, where they had black wealth there. They destroyed black wealth there. She had to go away and start all over. It's nothing. It was no reparations from there, no repair in the neighborhood, the community, or none of that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm working on a short film dealing with that right there, just showing how them communities, through, you know what I'm saying, the hatred that's constantly perpetuated against us, how it destroyed our communities, and not only that, it destroyed a legacy to come behind it, you know. So I'm working on that. I wanna ask you another question real quick. Hold on, I had it. It's a do you think knowing you were a chosen people could have changed your direction earlier?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it contributes to a sense of self-worth, a sense of value.
Right.
The lack of a value for oneself will contribute to the kinds of circumstances that one is willing to subject themselves to. So if you think that your worth is too great for you to potentially subject yourself to premature death, drug addiction, or incarceration, then you won't make the kinds of choices that will subject you to those things, because you recognize, no, I'm worth more than that.
Okay.
Like the people who didn't.
Right.
The people who came from the same circumstances that we came from, socioeconomically, who didn't make the choices we made, and were dealing with the same thing. They wanted to get money or whatever have you, you know, and they didn't make those choices. They had the same catalysts, same opportunities, but they didn't make those choices because something in them, people might think, oh, it was because they were scared, they weren't built for it. But for some of them, it was like, no, I'm better than that.
Yeah.
I'm better than that. I'm worth more than that. And so I'm worth more than subjecting myself to being killed or getting strung out or going to prison.
So what made you sit up there and change? Because I read somewhere too that The Wire was inspired by your story.
No, my Uncle Little Melvin.
Okay, your Uncle Little Melvin?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was his life story.
Wow. So he was part of your family.
Yeah, well, I had an avuncular connection with him.
Okay, I got you.
And when you come up in that lifestyle, you connect more with the people who are of that than you do with people who are not, regardless of what the familial connection might be.
Yeah.
Right? So those people, because of the commonality of that thread, they become more like your family than somebody who just happenstantially, you know, has the blood connection. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm sure you've got those kinds of situations where you have a cousin whom you're not as close with as somebody that you ran in the street with.
Right.
Because y'all share common experiences.
Yeah.
Y'all face things that you and that cousin have never faced.
Yeah.
That person knows you in a way, and you know that person in a way that you and your cousin have never had an opportunity to establish with one another.
Yeah.
And that's where relationships and bonding, that's where those things come from.
Yeah.
You know? So it's that kind of connection.
That's actually like how it is in this, you know, coming into the truth. That's what we call it, the truth. And what the truth is, just basically coming back to our true identity and keeping the commandments of God in the faith of Christ, you know what I'm saying, which we teach, of course, as a black man. And like you actually, like I tell brothers all the time, I'm like, look, you just got a worldwide family. You just got worldwide connections. We literally connected worldwide, you know. Even going back with thinking about gangs, because we trying to call the young men out of the gangs, let them know, like, look, if no matter what you join for, you can get out, and because a lot of y'all, you don't see the structure there. You know what I'm saying? You saying that some of us join for wisdom, to get the wisdom that they got, and you see that it ain't no structure. This was the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that, you know, repent, keep the commandments of God and the faithful Christ. We are the Israelites the Bible speaks of. Can you discuss how idolizing money and
You
fast
asked me a
life?
question that you didn't give me a chance to answer.
Which one? Which one?
I guess what made
Oh,
me
yeah, that's
what
right.
made me change?
Now, do you think knowing you were a chosen people could have changed your direction? Earlier? You answered that one.
Okay.
Yeah, you answered that one. Okay. Yeah, I did say that too. What
Yeah,
made you change?
What made me change?
What made you change? Yeah.
Again, it goes back to information. Back to information. When I gained the insight through my studying of personal development, psychology,
Yeah.
sociology, it gave me insights into behavior and the biology of the mind, of the brain, the function of the mind within the brain, that helped to put my choices into perspective. And I understood a lot of the things that we do, we're not doing for the reasons we think we're doing them.
Right.
You know, and it empowered me to make better decisions.
Yeah.
I read, the first book that I read as an adult was Monster by Senyuka Shakur.
Yeah.
And from reading that book, I read that in '95. Reading that book told me that, one, my life was valid because Monster Cody had written about his life, and his life was involved in criminality and street existence, all that stuff, whatever. And it made me feel like, well, if he could write, and I remember thinking, well, he could write about his life, I could write about my life. Although I wasn't thinking about writing about my life, but it made me, it had kind of like the same effect that listening to rappers who could articulate the experience of being a hustler in a way that was realistic and truer to the life than a lot of rappers did, like the way that Jay could do it, the way that Jay-Z could do it, the way that Pac could express it. Those are the things, you know, that made me appreciate them, because it's like he's putting not just our actions and behaviors into the air, but he's putting the motivations and the ideas and the experiences, emotional, psychological experiences around this lifestyle into perspective, yeah, validating us, right? So that was one level of impact from exposure to information. And then once I got, I read this book, and it was another level of validation. That validation is very, very important. It's very important because it contributes to your esteem. It contributes to your sense of self-worth, yeah, right? And as I just said a moment ago, when your self-worth is sufficient, then you begin to make more self-valuing decisions. Yeah. Right? You decide that you're worth more than subjecting yourself to whatever for the sake of getting a hold of some
telling us
money,
we is,
right? And so, once I read that book, and then the next book I read was Facing Codependence. And I learned a great deal about that. Women who love too much. That was the next book that I read. And that taught me a tremendous amount about how trauma and childhood experiences, most of which we forget, most of which our mind subverts rather. Yeah. And keeps us from recalling, so that the preferred narratives that we have about ourselves can stand out. You know what I mean? We want to think of ourselves more favorably, so our minds hide certain things about us from us so that we can maintain this preferred narrative. But the problem with that is, if you forget the experiences you've had, you have a tendency to repeat the behaviors that lead to those experiences, right? Yeah. And you don't remember it until you feel in the way you felt when you first had the experience, and you're like, damn, I did this before. Yeah. But you don't know why you're doing it. That book helped me to understand the cyclical process of trauma, and how we recreate the circumstances to bring about the trauma experience over and over again in an effort to, control it this time, type of thing.
Yeah.
but you're operating with the same degree of information. So you can subject yourself to it. You might be bigger and stronger, whatever, but you still don't know enough to change the way you responded.
Yeah.
So you're going to do the same thing anyway. The knowing enough is the point. That's the getting the information. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And then the next book that I read was Spirit of a Man by Inyama Van Zandt. And that was the book. By the time I finished reading that book, it was a wrap. I was like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done with the streets. I am worth more.
Yeah. So
That's when it
self-worth,
came
for the
yes,
most part, self-worth.
yes. But it was in those stages. First, it was the validation.
Yeah.
Then it was the insight, the understanding.
Yeah.
And then it was the sense of worth and value that I came to understand that it was, one, okay for me to say I have that. I don't need nobody else to say I have that.
Yeah.
I have it. I recognize through the insight and the understandings I've gained from these tomes that I, in fact, have that.
Yeah.
And by way of that, I can make a better decision and choose to do anything other than the only thing I've ever done. I never had a job. I was never part of normal society. I only ever sold drugs and carried guns.
Yeah.
That's all I ever did in my life up until I was 30 years old and said, all right, I don't want to do it no more. So those were key. And I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to share that, because that is the most important thing. And that's why I created the Mind Plug Academy. That's why I created the curriculum, for the YNs, the young niggas, to help them to understand these things through through exposure to my book, through Raised by Wolves. When I pulled the real life experiences out of my book, circumstances where a great many other people who've had these same experiences, these same particular instances, they lost their lives,
Right.
or they lost their minds, or they lost their freedom, but I didn't.
Right.
So in giving them the examples in which I had these experiences that most people don't survive, and explaining to them how it was I was able to make the decisions that I made, and how those decisions contributed to my being able to not just survive, but to flourish. I was powerful in the street.
Right.
I was strong everywhere I was. I'm strong in those places still to this day.
Yeah.
I can go anywhere I ever sold drugs.
Yeah.
And I'm received as though I didn't come there to poison the people there.
Yeah.
So
I want to read
that's
a
what's
proverb
important.
real quick. When you said that, you made me think about just dealing with self-worth. So this was one of my proverbs of the day. It said, when you got something to work for, you work harder. When you have nothing to work for, you become slothful. When you got something to live for, you live righteously. When you have nothing to live for, you live recklessly.
That's right.
What is your why? And if you don't know, find your purpose. So that goes back to a biblical scripture. Because everything that I do now is spiritual. I'm glad the Lord opened my eyes, because at one point in time, I was just lost. I remember I started the new year off, and I'm just being honest. From what we teach, the scripture saying in Exodus 12:1, the new year starts in the spring.
Of course.
That's the beginning of months in the spring.
Of course it
So
does.
we don't go by that January the 1st.
No, not at all. Me and my wife, we don't
Yeah.
do the same thing. We don't.
Yeah, that's Janice,
In March, we started
Yeah.
telling people Happy New Year.
Yeah, that's when it is.
New
Between
Year.
March and April. Happy
Happy
New
New
Year.
Year.
Yeah. So I want to read this. It say Ecclesiastes
More
12
so
and
April,
13.
actually. April 1st, we started telling people Happy New Year.
April 1st. Okay. It say, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep the commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. The Lord gave us the commandments because he wanted us to rule the earth. When you read in the book, is that 2nd Ezra chapter 7, y'all, verse 56? When he said, I created the world. Let me get it real quick. 2nd Ezra.
54.
It's 6?
654.
Okay, 2nd Ezra chapter 6, verse 54.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to read that real quick. But now, that's the Bible teaches us the duty of man is fear him and keep his commandments. That's the duty of man. That's our purpose, to keep the commandments. And the reason why he gave us the commandments, this 2nd Ezra chapter 6, verse 54 say, and after these Adams also, whom thou madest Lord of all thy creatures, him come we all, and the people also whom thou hast chosen. All this have I spoken before thee, O Lord, because thou madest the world for our sakes. The Lord created the world for us, period. but in order to give people the world, you know. And when I'm hearing this, I'm like, hold on, the Lord. So the crazy part about it, so check this out. When you first read it, he was like, well, what about everybody else? And then it'll say it right here, say, it's for the other people which also come about them. Thou has said they are nothing, but be like unto spittle, and has likened them, the abundance of them, and has likened the abundance of them unto a drop that falleth from a vessel. And now, O Lord, behold, these heathen, which have ever been reputed as nothing, have begun to be lords over us and devour us. So the Bible is sitting up there saying, these are our records and our encounter with God. And, you know, that's what we grown to understand. He created the world for us. And we know we are the original, the first humans. We know we the first people. We know that Adam was created first, he a black man. And we know now that we are the sons of God, especially through, you know, the teachings of the scriptures and really going through our records and looking at it like, wow, this stuff really took place. This is a history book, but this our encounter with the creator of the heavens and the earth right here. But our people, they don't, you know, they lack knowledge of self. Because I know you keep saying education, so I did want to ask you something about education, because a lot of our people, they got master's degrees, you know. When it comes to education, what type of education is you exactly talking about? I know you said you read certain books and stuff, but what is the exact education that you think that they need? Because a lot of our people, they going to college, they going to schools, and they taking this education. Like they said, black women is one of the most educated group of women. They say even more educated than the white man. But what have they took this education and done with it? Because as we see right now, and I'm not against black, I love our sisters. You know, we teach against interracial marriage, because Deuteronomy 7:3 in the book of Ezra, the Lord said, you know, be with your own people. Simple as that. So we teach against interracial marriage. And that was going back to, you said, brother on the street, cussing folks out, stuff like that. No, if anything, they properly edify on somebody on the mountain. Look, this is what our God expects of us, you know, the creators of the Lord of heaven and earth, the ones who chosen us out of all people, you know. And knowing that, when you read stuff like this, though, and you like, hold on, man, God chose us to set us high above everybody, and everybody else nothing to him, when all your life you was hearing that you were nothing. You was hearing that your skin was a curse. You was hearing that your hair is, that's why I keep growing I grow my hair out. Because no matter what people try, well, you look like a thug. I don't give a damn what you think I look like. You know what I'm saying? I don't care what they think I look like. I love my hair. I'm going to grow it out and let you know. Look, this is how I naturally grow. This is what the Lord blessed me with. I'm not going to be ashamed of what the Most High set up there and put, you know, how he created me. It said he was the author of beauty first and foremost. You know, and a lot of our people, they be ashamed, especially our sisters, they'd be ashamed of their hair. They weren't, you see, they wear the wigs, and I know you be on TikTok. You see all these different ways they wear the wigs. Now it's crazy. But now just dealing with.
The woman put a wig on the other day, bro, like a helmet.
Yeah.
Like a helmet. She just picked it up and just,
yeah, to put it on.
It had the hair and all that. And
yeah, I seen that. That's crazy. Yeah.
Disturbing.
That's a lack of self-worth right there.
Disturbing, bro.
Yeah.
Disturbing. So you asked two questions. You said,
okay.
You know, what do I deem education?
Right.
As I said earlier on in this conversation, education, I'm not a fan of institutional learning.
Gotcha.
Because I understand the nature of it.
That's indoctrination.
That's it.
Kindergarten through 12th grade.
All right. So I believe that, you know, that there are, like, I've read thousands of books.
Wow.
And I've never done a day in prison.
Yeah.
I read them as I was in the street getting money, doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know? And that, to me, that's, I mean, it's education. It's, you know, reading, studying. Now you got, I used to have to walk around with a big 400-page, you know, dictionary and thesaurus.
Yeah.
You know? Now you got that device. You can just look at that device.
Yeah, supercomputers.
You know what I mean? You can just say, hey, Siri, what does this mean? Or what does that mean? Or what does this mean? Or what does that mean? You know what I mean? And, you know, so there's no reason not to be educating yourself. Right. No reason whatsoever. If you can sit around and smoke weed and play video games for hours on end, as I understand some brothers do, then you definitely have time to read a book.
Right.
You definitely have time to watch a seminar.
Yeah.
You definitely have time to listen to an audiobook. If you can ride down the highway, a lot of brothers are coming home driving trucks or whatever.
Yeah.
You definitely have time. If you can ride around listening to music, and ride around listening to an audiobook.
Right. That's how I got into learning about geopolitics.
Mm-hmm.
I love geopolitics now.
Yeah, I was introduced to geopoliticism by Zbigniew Brzezinski, a book he wrote called The Grand Chessboard.
Yeah.
That was about probably
a lot of people, they don't look into that. If they look into that, they'll see that like the earth is ran by empires, and then you'll still see the quest for white supremacy still, but they'll feed you one thing and they'll go and do the opposite stuff.
I recognized that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
That's one thing about gangsterism. Growing up in gangsterism, you see the world through that lens, and you recognize that it is in everything. So I didn't grow up with this idea that the white world was legitimate.
Right.
I didn't grow up with that idea because I saw the tenets of gangsterism in the banking, in the governance, in everything.
All the corruption.
I saw it. I saw it, and I thought everybody saw it, but I didn't understand that my particular developmental exposure and influence fixed my lens in such a way that these things would be apparent to me and not apparent to my peers. The second question you asked is about, as you stated, black women are purported to be the single most educated group of people in this country.
Yeah.
And you ask, what are they doing with it?
Yeah. Right.
A lot of melanated women are creating organizations and businesses. There's, if you correlate the degree of education, the disproportionate amount of education attributed to black women, and you connect that to the amount of black women that own businesses, you'll see what they're doing with it.
Yeah.
They're opening up businesses. They're creating businesses, or in some instances, but Trump is undermining this in his own hubris and ignorance, because I don't really believe that he is coming up with this stuff himself at all.
Oh no,
he's being absolutely manipulated by the people.
Yeah, he got a whole
Right.
cabinet behind him that's coming up with all this stuff.
So a lot of the black women who are very educated and so forth have assimilated into some of these global organizations and brought their skill sets. My wife is one of them. My wife works with a global organization.
Yeah.
Right. And she's an essential component, because she solves problems.
Right.
Right. So, but she also grew up with a father who was absolutely revolutionary.
Yeah.
So she's very, very sharp, very hip.
She know what she's doing.
She know what's going on.
Okay.
Right. And so now that this guy is pushing this agenda, he is now pushing those resources out from those organizations and forcing those whom haven't taken their education and built businesses and so forth and brought it to their communities and so forth, forcing them to come out of those situations and create their own independent situations, because now it's like you're basically blatantly saying you don't want these assets.
Right.
You don't want these these beautiful, brilliant black women as a part of your situation. You want to act like this. We don't need them. Oh, okay. You've always needed us, but okay.
Yeah. That's the only way this country came powerful.
But this is what happens when, again, people have been being told lies about themselves for generations and generations and generations.
Excuse me.
He's the culmination of this idea of their supremacy. That's why he's in the position he's in. There's no reason that he should be in that office whatsoever, except for the ignorance and hubris of his alike. You know what I'm saying? There's no reason that he should be there. Anybody who says you can just walk up to them, walk up to women when you're slave, you can just walk up to them and grab them by the pussy. The moment that he was heard saying that, seen saying that, that should have disqualified him from anybody's consideration. There's no way that any moral, decent, ethical person could have looked at that and excused that.
Right.
If you did, you're not a moral, ethical person.
Yeah.
Period.
No, that's true. Nobody shouldn't.
And that's
put their
coming from
hands
a
on
stone
nobody.
cold gangster,
Yeah.
a real live ultra criminal, formerly. And I'm telling you, I would never, I don't care what color he is, a man that would say something like that would imply that he does something like that is absolutely unqualified to be leadership in any respect whatsoever. And for you not to know better than to do that, to put him in that position, to support that, is a clear sign of your own insanity.
Yeah.
There's something very, very wrong with the society.
Hey,
and I've been waiting for a long time for white people to find out that they niggas too.
Right.
I've been waiting for a long time.
Hey, look,
to find it out
that's why
now.
we teach, we don't vote, you know.
No.
Yeah, we teach against that right there, because at the end of the day, the Lord is our king. When you go back and read the history of our records, when we chose a king, we pissed the Lord off. We pissed the creators of the heaven and earth off. So we don't vote. When we teach it, we firmly against it. We already know it ain't gonna help. It ain't gonna help change nothing anyway.
No, the choices you're given are the choices that they provide. Any of those choices are going to be people whom they've already compromised.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand that this is a system that's built on compromise, it's built on the people that are in the positions of authority, governance, whatever have you, they've all been compromised.
Yeah.
That's why they're able to participate. They've been compromised. If they haven't been compromised, that means that nobody can control them. If nobody can control them, you best to believe they will not have access in a way that can allow them to really make any changes.
Yeah.
That's why education of each and every one of us is so important. Because if we as a collective are educated, then it does not matter who's sitting in what seat talking about what. We know how to move as a common unified group of people towards a collective goal that will serve us best, period.
We can create
not
our
just
own
now,
seat.
but in
Yeah.
generations in perpetuity.
Yeah, we can create our own seat. God calls that a kingdom.
They keep trying to buy
Yeah.
into this system by the same time saying the system is against us, the system is against us. I don't trust them, I don't trust them. And then turn around and do what they say.
Yeah, and that's why
That's cognitive dissonance.
it's
I don't
something
trust
that
Whitey.
you
What Whitey say to do, I do it.
It's something that you just said, dealing with our sisters in the education, being assimilated. I think that's one of the main things, is they get the education and then they become assimilated into the culture.
But that's what the problem
Yeah.
is with going to their institutions. Part
Right.
of that institutional learning is the subjugation.
Indoctrinate,
That's
yeah.
right, to indoctrinate.
Yeah, keep
right.
you working for them.
That's right.
Instead of going against the system, because feminism is like it is fifth wave right now. It's at all time high.
Mhm.
And you just looking at how our sisters dress and stuff like that. Like we teach, I'm gonna get this real quick. And this for our sisters, man. Look, we love y'all, but y'all gotta cover up, sisters. This First Timothy chapter 1 and verse 9. It say
Low self-esteem.
2 and 9. It's saying like manner also. And notice these Christian women. And right now we done rage war like on Christianity. They losing. They didn't called out they didn't call out what's the word? They theologians to try to fight. They can't beat us in nothing. Like we do this every day, all day. This is our way of life. So you can't. It's hard to beat somebody that lives a certain way, you know, and actually do and practice the stuff that they teach. But it said, like manner also, that women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefaced and sobriety, not with braided hair or gold or pearl or costly array. So it's not saying they can't braid their hair. It's not saying that they can't have gold, pearls, or costly array. All it's saying is that a woman is to adorn themselves in modest apparel, not to attract sexual attention. As we see now in this day and age, all our sisters dressing to attract sexual attention. The other day I did a video, and it's another thing they pushing now is that the body count don't matter. And it don't matter to a whoremonger. Your body count don't matter to somebody that just try to have sex with you. It don't matter to them.
That's right.
But it matters to a man that want to wife you up and make you a husband.
That's right.
No man don't want no woman that done been through 100 different men.
No.
Hell no. Men are real territorial. We don't want to know that you've been conquered and subdued 100 times. Because when a man
You
has
walk
sex,
into a room and walk into a club,
everybody
and,
know.
and every other guy that you say hello to, you've slept with.
Right. And they don't understand that, you know. So let me get another script. One more scripture, Deuteronomy 22 verse 5. Deuteronomy 22 verse 5. And this just dealing with the dress code too. A lot of the stuff that we teach, that we be trying to get people to understand, if we do these things, like if we keep the commandments of God, right, we can destroy the industrial prison complex. We can destroy that. How they gonna lock us? If everybody keeping the law, thou shalt not kill, right? How can they lock us up for killing? Thou shalt not steal. How can they lock us up for stealing? The industrial prison complex, it thrives on crime. If we ain't doing crime, another word for crime is sin. If we ain't doing those things, how can they keep us at, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
how can they keep doing these things to us?
Well, think about it. When they call themselves emancipating us and then realize that they couldn't maintain without the labor,
Yeah.
they figured out ways to start locking people up, right? Vagrancy and so forth.
Okay, I
So
got
they
that in there
created-
too. I got
They
this
created
in there,
circumstances that were unavoidable based upon the fact that they controlled the majority of the resources, right? So they created circumstances that were a natural result of what they had subjected us to.
Yeah.
And then they made those circumstances against the law.
Right.
So by virtue of existing, we were breaking the law.
Right.
And that justified putting us in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think that that won't work.
Yeah.
So you ask, how can they do that? We don't do this and we don't do that, whatever that.
Right.
They'll just make whatever we do against the law.
Yeah. Well, hey, we dealing with that in France right now. Hey, we are dealing with that in France right now. All we teach, keep the commandments of God, Christ is black, wake up, tell our sisters to dress up. They said we womanizers now because we telling our sisters, don't dress to attract sexual attention. Put on modest apparel, men gonna respect you more. And that's the truth. Mm-hmm. The thing is, you would think like with us, what we teach, we breaking every man code is supposed to be. You know, you're not supposed to say this type of stuff and be telling women that. Because when we see it, we telling her to take it off. They made songs about this, you know. Mm-hmm. Or you sexy, and you know, you supposed to want them for just the sex. That's how I was brought up and taught. Look, don't get married, just have sex and move on, you know.
Yeah,
and
I was raised by some hardcore, cold-blooded Jim Crow gangsters.
Yeah.
And women were not prioritized.
Right.
So although I had a lot of women growing up, it was because they were attracted to me.
Yeah.
I did not pursue them. I did not chase women. I did not get my hair cut the way I did because I thought it would appeal to women. I did not buy the clothes that I bought because I thought they would appeal to women. I did not wear the jewelry or make any mannerism because I thought this is going to attract women at all. It was never a thought. I did what I did on the basis of my own appreciation and expression of my individuality.
Right.
And women were drawn to that because, as it turns out, most guys don't do that. So the guys that do it, we stand out like you wouldn't believe.
Right.
But I had no concept of that. I did not know that. Because I wasn't around men that talked about women and getting the women and knock them off and check them out.
Right.
I didn't hear that growing up. I heard, handle your business, and this how you handle your business, and this is what you do, and this is what you take care of, and all that other stuff was peripheral, including women, and they came along with that. And I think that lack of that type of male influence for a great many of my generation is why so many of them perpetuated that white male patriarchal ideology that, you know, infused with the over-sexualization of us when we were subjugated in their system of chattel slavery, right? Mm-hmm. Using us as, you know, propagating machines, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they bred us.
Right.
You know, that's
right? So
scripture.
that you take that patriarchal ideology and you take that breeding indoctrination and you put it together and you get, you know, this hypersexualized, you know,
what we got today.
Right.
Because it's going down. It's crazy.
You got today. That's it.
Yeah,
and then you create a whole culture around it. Right. Right.
Rap music.
And give it a soundtrack.
Yeah.
Right. And give it these over the top visuals like what came about in the early part of the 90s, you know, where with the big videos and flashing lights and all that, whatever, all that stuff from a social psychological perspective, that's brainwashing.
Right.
That's brainwashing. You're validating the behavior. You're aggrandizing the behavior. You're making it make sense.
And they think they got to do that too.
Well, they think if you don't do it, something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with you.
Right.
Because you're not going along to get along.
Hey, that's on point. I told my family members, I said, when I first came into the truth, everybody thought I was crazy, and they were like, "Oh, he in a cult, whatever."
Just imagine when I suddenly wake up and say, "Yeah, I'm not fucking around, not selling drugs no more, whatever."
That's it.
It's like, yo, Cavario lost his mind.
He crazy.
He read too many books, man. He done lost his mind. Yo, Cavario went crazy.
Yeah.
Cavario went crazy. And when I was like, that's your response to me making a sound decision such as this? That's not realize how really, really screwed up my circle was.
Right. So y'all hear that, don't it? You make a real change. Look, you could be out here drug dealing, gang banging, killing folks, robbing, stealing, shut down everything. As long as you bringing in that paper, everybody think you're in your right kind of mind. Soon as you sit up here and say, look, I'm through with all of this mess, and you do something different, the first thing people gonna say is he crazy and he in a cult. We ass backwards.
That is
we ass backwards.
That's key to our brokenness, bro.
Right.
The fact that we've allowed everything to be turned inside out. So up is down, on is off, right is wrong, left is right. If you think about it, everything that people subscribe to is the opposite of what it actually is in effect, right? So they think a good life is doing all the bad things.
Yeah.
Doing all the bad things lead to a good life. That's counterintuitive. Where's the cognition? Where's the thinking?
Right.
You know, that's why it's important for cats like ourselves who've been through a certain lifestyle and had certain experiences to push this narrative of coming to your understanding of who you are, your truth about yourself.
Yeah.
Exposing yourself to information and learning.
Yeah.
You know, and making that cool again. You know?
I want to read this because you made a good point. This is Isaiah 5:20. It say, "Warn to them that call evil good and good evil. They put darkness for light and light for darkness. They put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter."
That's right.
That's what our people do.
Right.
We call good evil
That's right.
and evil good.
That's right.
You know, that's why brothers out there in Kenya, they teaching Christ is black. They stoning the brothers, like literally. And then
I saw that.
they hit them with tear gas out
saw
there.
that.
The church, look, the Christian church, the God love everybody. There's neither no Jew, no Greek, no Gentile. For God so loved the world, Christian church stoned the men out there. And they shot tear gas at them, you know, injuring brothers and everything out there.
I saw it.
And you haven't seen nothing like that since the time of the apostles when they was going out.
I should have did a reaction video to that when I saw that. If I had any idea that that's what I was going to see when I opened that link that y'all sent me,
right,
I would have had a video going so that my response could be seen. Like, my mind was blown. I said, now you talking about some subjugated, self-hating.
right.
Like, there is no salvation for any melanated person who will respond that way to being told that I don't know whether they look at the Jesus character as God or Son of God or what is it. That's always been very funny to me. Is like, some people act like they believe that the Jesus character was God, and some act like, well, that's the Son of God. Well, it's really, obviously people just aren't really paying attention.
Oh yeah, they confused. They don't read the book.
They're just not paying attention. That's obvious. But to respond that way to being told something that should give, if you have reverence for this character, for this idea, and then you're told, and what you haven't been told about this wonderful idea, this individual, is that he looked like you. And your response is, no way, I'm not shit. It couldn't possibly be. He's like, yo, you are fucked up.
Right.
You are fucked up.
For
bad.
real though.
Bad.
Bad.
Like, your problem is so much beyond religiosity. You have a deep psychological problem.
Self-hatred, lack of self-worth.
Until you get past that, there is no salvation for you.
Right.
Life will be hell for you. Period. And when I saw that, I was like, look at the mob mentality kicks right in, you know, it's unbelievable. But that is how they systemically do that everywhere they go. That's why I say anytime you see those missionaries, now as soon as they see them, they should be throwing the stones and the tear gas.
Right.
As soon as you see them, start throwing stones and tear gas, because they come in with fuckery.
Right.
History has already shown you that.
Yeah.
I don't know how isolated our brothers and sisters there are from, like the rest of the world or history.
Yeah. Oh, they gone.
That they're not aware of what these people have done historically over and over and over again.
They know what they done, but they love them so much. I've been to 5 African countries, and they literally think that they are God. And you ask them why, they'll be like, well, because they created planes, they created this, they created that, they gave us lights, they gave us this, they gave us that. They don't know that we over here was
They don't know we created all those things?
Yeah, they don't know that. They don't know we was
They don't know we
instrumental.
created the first planes. They don't know that we generated the
Right.
electrical grids. They don't know we did all of that.
They don't know that. They don't know that. No, they don't know that. So that's why you see, like, the reason why our mission is so big. So we still got to educate people here in America. So people in America don't know we did those things. So they didn't know a black man created the first plane and he couldn't get the patent for it.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a patent as a black man.
Well, they created the patent office for the purpose of legally stealing our ideas.
Stealing everything.
That's the reason they created it.
Right. A lot of our people don't know this stuff. We always came up with ideas, and our bishop, he wrote a book. I'm finna give you the name.
Because we're natural creators.
And I'm telling you, man, I wish I had one on me, but he didn't have none yesterday. But go get this book. It's called, I'll send you the name of it. It's called Biblical, hold on, let me get it. Why did I got a video? It's called Biblical Events from Assyria to America, Correcting His Story to Include Our Story. It's giving our history from the time that we was in Assyria all the way up to today. It got so many references.
I definitely want that.
Facts, all of that up in
I
there.
definitely want that.
It's showing, and I'm telling, hey, y'all, go get that book. I'm talking about it's straight on point. So Bishop Nathaniel, like, I don't know if you ever seen in his teachings, but he teach every
I watched him
Saturday.
last night.
Okay, you watched him? Okay, all praise to the Most High.
I watched him having that conversation with PLO over there in Africa.
Yeah, now that was right there. That was revolutionary for us right there, cause, for him to sit down with Patrice Lumumba, that was big right there. That was big. That's a revolutionary, and that's what we about. We about revolution. We know that right now we ain't for picking up arms and stuff like that. We know we want to win. The main thing, like what you've been saying, education, but trying to educate our people in the laws of God about who they are and calling them back to repentance. You know what I'm saying? Religion has divided us. The religion is worse than gangs.
Yes.
They worse than gangs.
That's exactly right.
We more divided in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, created by a white woman, Jehovah's Witness, created by a white man, goddamn Catholicism, white people.
Yep.
All of these religions is white supremacy. And until our people learn to put them religions down, all of those different Christian religions, you know what I'm saying, until they learn that, they're going to continue to put white supremacy.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Going back to what you said about the assimilation, this for all my brothers and sisters in Africa, he just made a good point. Our sisters, they get educated. Not only our sisters, the men do too. We got geniuses among us. And what they do, they got a movie about it. They take these geniuses and they separate them from their people.
That's right.
Like Mark Dean was one of them. He created the computer. You know what I'm saying? They separate them from our people, assimilate them into their society, make them forget about their people, and now they serve them in their pay purpose.
That's part of what the institutions are for.
Yeah. Find out who the geniuses are.
You got to realize that there was a time when, like, not only we weren't afforded access to what they pass off as education within their system, because obviously we created education.
Yeah.
Right? But when they came into power, they didn't allow anybody who wasn't of the blue blood to have education. The idea of creating education came about as an effort to try and aggregate the best minds so that they could control them. Those are resources. That's the only reason. Other than that, they had no interest in educating the people. That was
Right.
well.
Yeah,
Why would that be something they'd be interested in? Except to serve themselves. They never do anything to serve anybody but themselves. That's all they're ever interested in.
Right. So look, I want to close this out because I know it's 4 o'clock now. The final words. Give a message to all our young brothers and sisters, this out there watching. A lot of them, they're struggling with leaving the street life. Give them a positive message. Tell them, what would you say to sit up there to just pull them away from their lifestyle? What can they do?
Well, see, the thing is, man, when I was doing what I was doing, everything I ever had came from drugs.
Yeah.
I had an opulent lifestyle from birth, and it all came from drugs. So at the point at which I was able to provide my children with the quality lifestyle, they grew up in beautiful places.
Yeah.
Right? Went to great schools, had all the great toys and things and all that stuff, whatever. Sending people to college, There was nothing that you could tell me. What was you going to tell me? What you going to replace it with?
Yeah.
Right? So there was nothing somebody could tell me to say, yo, you need to stop doing this, stop doing that. And there were nobody was doing that either, firstly. No one ever said you should do something else. No one ever said that.
Yeah.
I was never being discouraged from being in the street. But if a person were to try and turn my mind away from that, they would have to have been able to provide me with some understanding of how I would be able to access the level of monetary acquisition that I was accessing that enabled me to provide the level of lifestyle I was providing for those I love. Other than that, what you talking about?
Yeah.
The world, remember, I'm looking through the lens of gangsterism. The world itself is absolutely corrupt. And I think people are starting to see that now. I think people are looking and seeing all of these corporations and all of these politicians, they're all being exposed for corruption and theft and amoral behavior and unethical behavior, and so that people are realizing all up and down the social scale that all of this presentation of moral and ethical and legal behavior, it's all bullshit.
Right.
It's just those who've gotten caught and those who haven't. Right? So it's a very difficult time, even for kids who may not have that degree of conscious awareness of just how widespread corruption is in this society today. They do sense that something ain't right. It don't feel real to them. You understand what I'm saying? So the only thing I could say to a young person who's in the street, I would definitely say, jump at the first opportunity to do something different. It won't last forever. Most people won't. I'm statistically an anomaly. Most people will not make the millions of dollars that I made and then live to make the decision to walk away from it. That won't happen.
Yeah.
I don't know of any others personally. But if you have an opportunity to do something different, then you should take advantage of it. If you're doing all right in the street and you're making some money, understand that just like it was a time when you weren't, no matter what effort you made, it just wasn't working. There will be a time again where no matter what effort you make, it won't be working. Because there are many circumstances outside of what you're doing that make what you're doing work right now. And it got nothing to do with how smart you are, how much hustle you got. There's so many other factors that you cannot see that are aligning in your favor at this moment. And change is constant. So you're at a point of change where it's aligning with your desired goals. But as it's happening, it's also changing. And there will come a time that no matter what degree of effort you make, it just won't work the way it was working anymore. So you have to take advantage of this moment. If you've got some money, then you've got some time. Instead of spending that money and time in some club trying to show off for people who haven't figured out what you figured out at this point, because there ain't nothing to that. They'll cheer you and all that shit for everything you're doing right now. They'll say, yo, you see that new car, that new truck, that new watch? Yo, he doing it. As soon as you get busted, he's like, stupid ass nigga buying that car, that truck, and that watch and all that. So, same shit they praise you for, they will haze you for.
Right.
So understand that if you have an opportunity to do something different, you should do it. You should absolutely do it. And the key to exposing yourself to those options, because you won't see them if you're not seeking them. The key to exposing yourself to that, is information. Yo, pick up a book, man. Pick up a book. Your mind is a muscle. Your brain is a muscle. And if you don't exercise it, like any other muscle, it'll go soft, it'll get flabby. You have to constantly exercise it. By exercising it, by exposing yourself to information that you don't currently have, you give yourself more options to choose from. You're aware of more things. If you don't know anything about anything and you get some money, all you're going to do is spend it because you don't know what else to do with it. You have no other ideas. So all you'll do is the more you get, the more you'll spend because there is no other information in your head. So exposure to information, reading, studying, watching things like this, taking into consideration that the things that you're hearing coming out of our mouths has some validity, and making some different decisions, daring to step outside of the ideas that your associates hold in high regard, and saying, excuse me, fuck them.
Oh yeah, fuck them. Hey, can I read the scripture? Was you finished with your closing?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So look, hey y'all, all praise to the Most High for this sit down. Hey, I want to read Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 29. It's saying the Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart, and thou shalt grope at noonday as the ground gropeth in darkness. A lot of our people, we trying to find a way in a system, and a system that's been set up for us to fail, man. Y'all got to think, we went into slavery for breaking the commandments of God. Blacks, Hispanic, Native Americans, Bantu people, Aboriginal of the islands of the Pacific Islands, the Solomon Islands, our brothers and sisters on the west coast of Africa, the Native American Indians. You are the Israelite the Bible speaks of. Chasing money, Proverbs 23 verse 4, because a lot of us, we try to chase this money, but the Bible tells us, labor not to be rich, for riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle. 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 9 it say, they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, for the love of money is the root of all evil. Money ain't evil, but the love of money is the root of all evil. Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 4 it say, thou even thyself shall discontinue from thy heritage that I gave thee. And the Lord sent us into captivity. Us as a people, we discontinue from the heritage that he gave us. The slave ships in the Bible, the yokes of iron on our neck is in the Bible. Everything in this society and around the world, wherever we go, has been set up to keep God's people at the bottom. Why? Because one thing they know, when we start to repent and we come together as one and keep God's commandments, we going to be the top nation again. Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 43 say, the nations, let me get that real quick. Verse 43 say, the stranger that is within thee shall get above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. Dr. Claude Anderson spoke about this. He spoke about the strange nations that come amongst us and they get above us very high. It say, he shall lend to thee. They start doing predatory loans, and thou shalt not lend to him. Who do we lend to as a nation of people? He shall be thy head, and thou shalt be the tail. These nations, they have came here and they have excelled us and have excelled us. When it comes to trying to close the wage gap, we can't close the wage gap. Why? Because we constantly fight amongst each other. We don't know who we are. We lack the education that we need to sit up there to build as a group. That's collectivism, not individualism. You might be doing good. You might be doing straight, nice house, nice car, but it's your people, it's your nation of people doing great. And not just the ones here in America, our people scattered worldwide.
I would like to read something before
Okay.
we go.
Yes, sir.
Because, this is very important to my circumstance and my situation.
Yes, sir.
My books, the sale of my books and so forth, right? So I want to read the intro to give people, when they hear about a book written by a person who was formerly in the streets, I think a lot of them get ideas in their minds about it being like urban lit, or there was a period between like 99 and 2005 where that genre of street book was very popular.
Yeah.
And I'd like to share my content so as to make it very clear, this ain't urban lit.
Okay, make it happen, man. Yes, sir.
The name of my book, firstly, is Raised by Wolves, Inside the Life and Mind of a Guerrilla Hustler, is the subtitle. This is the intro. As a child in the constant presence of gangsters, I overheard a lot. I remember hearing it said that it's better to be feared than to be loved. I remember gangsters who tried to live on love, and I remember that it almost always ended badly for them. But then, many of the feared didn't fare too well either. I remember an afternoon in a Harlem classroom long ago, after collecting a writing assignment from me, my first grade teacher, whose name I no longer recall, said, "You write well, Cavario. You could be a writer." I remember sneering and remarking, "A writer? I'm going to be a gangster." I remember thinking that I had chosen the game, but I survived long enough to understand that the game had chosen me long before I even knew what choice was. Long before I understood that the choices we make sometimes lead to circumstances that leave no choices at all. Long before I knew the world was filled with infinite possibilities. Bullshit yourself and the world will play along. We're taught this long before we can identify our true selves. But even before that mental is uploaded into our psyches, we, as children, operate on simplistic interpretation. This is what makes us more likely to do what the adults in our lives do rather than what they say. My people never wanted me to be in the street, but everything in my home and everything in my community dictated otherwise. And as psychologists will often argue whether nature or nurture is the cause of our behaviors, I've come to suspect that it's a bit of both. If that's so, then the likelihood of my becoming who and what I became was as sure as the earth on its axis. Although I ended up bringing something uniquely my own into existence, I was nurtured in a setting replete with criminal inclination. I often, too, felt the influences of my parents' innate makeup heavily affecting my actions. This exposure hardened me and prepped me for what would become my future. Consciously, I knew nothing of the interaction between my genes and my world, but I held all of my elders in the highest regard. Theirs was a criminal dynasty, cold, mean, and unflinching, and they bared no weaknesses, or at least none that were visible to my young eyes. Growing up in the 70s gave me the opportunity to witness the end of an era. It is a time that will never be repeated, a time through which I was afforded the knowledge of the unwritten handbook. The pictures on the pages of our invisible manual bore images of fierce flights and frivolous fancies, and I looked forward to growing up and taking my place in this gritty landscape. Like most children, I thought my home was indicative of all homes. I thought that everyone witnessed hundreds of thousands of dollars being counted by their parents on an almost daily basis. I thought everyone found 100-round spitting .45 caliber Thompson submachine guns in their mother's bedroom closet. Thus, by the age of 9, I truly believed that I was genetically engineered for the life of a gangster. And at this point, I have forgotten more about the game of death than most have had the time or opportunity to learn before their time is up and their opportunities are no more. Who am I? I am the son of my Harlem-born, gangster-to-her-heart mother and the genetic product of my Harlem-born, killer-without-a-heart father. I'm the result of confusion and anger and the byproduct of deceit and greed. I'm 100% guerrilla hustler.
Yes, sir.
What is a nation? Nation is family. Nation is community. Nation is men leading by example. Nation is women's support. Nation is children with role models. Nation is unity.